One Piece Supreme Control, Chapter 81-100. Chapter 81. I feel very cool. The more you don't want it, the sooner it will come. The two people in the field who didn't want to fight the most were forcibly pushed out of the boat by Yongqing. Nodding slightly towards Dylan's, a smile appeared on the latter's face, and then his right hand pointed lightly towards the two of them. Boom. After a sound, Bucky and Drizzt disappeared from the Reaper. Boss, can the two of them do it? Glades said suspiciously, looking at the state of the two. They didn't have any fighting spirit at all. Haha, okay, you have to trust them. Yongqing laughed and patted Glades on the shoulder. On the two ships, there were people fighting everywhere, screaming one after another. Blood dripped all over the deck, giving off a strong smell of blood. The real experience of pirates, of course, will not be as harmonious as in the anime. In this world, there are countless blood and killings. Trust me. At the same time, Bucky and Drizzt shouted with displeased expressions on the two pirate ships. There is an outsider here. Seeing the figures of the two, the pirates everywhere immediately reacted and waved the machete towards them. Bucky was stunned, and 4 or 5 long knives slashed across his body, making his eyes shrink in fright, and the 4 or 5 pirates who swarmed up were even more stunned. They didn't see any blood. What the hell is this? Fractured, big spinning top. Bucky was furious. He was actually hacked. If it wasn't for the devil fruit ability, he would be dead. He held 2 knives in his hands and turned sharply. Ah! In an instant, there were screams all over the place, and it was just a move. Bucky placed these pirates, and then stepped out on the blood. His eyes were blood red, and the blood boiled the courage in his heart and made him angry. At this moment, Bucky took the first step of reform. He is transforming from a weak man to a strong man. Die! The wind swept across the back. Bucky didn't even have an expression. He didn't hide. He turned his right hand and slashed with a knife. The long knives were as fast as lightning, and with a sound of poof, the knives of both sides slashed the other's body. The difference was that the long knife of the man behind slashed through Bucky's chest, but there was not a trace of blood flowing out. That man, but the blood spurted, sprinkled Bucky all over. Bucky moved on, his whole body trembling slightly, either excited or nervous. Going forward all the way, rampaging all the way, on the whole ship, most of them are pirates with cold weapons in their hands. This is the most favorable situation for Bucky, and his combat effectiveness has reached the limit. Suddenly, a group of people rushed up, holding the wall in their hands, pointed at Bucky and shouted, "You, don't move, take one step further, and I will shoot you." Bucky took a step, and saw a dozen people in front with guns in their hands, pointing at him tremblingly, sweat on his face. At this moment, Bucky's heart suddenly trembled. He could understand the expressions on the faces of the people on the other side. They were afraid of themselves and trembling with fear. Looking back slightly, there were 50 or 60 corpses lying on the ground, filled with blood. Bucky blinked, as if he didn't expect this scene to be caused by himself. So I can be so powerful. At this moment, Bucky had such an idea in his heart. He took a step forward, and then he saw the dozens of people holding guns on the opposite side retreated 3 steps in fear. They forgot to shoot, and there was only fear in their hearts. Some people even couldn't hold the gun firmly. Fall to the ground. Bucky moved on, his footsteps moving, picking up speed. After 3 seconds, his figure almost turned into a phantom. He has practiced on the One Piece ship and has a good foundation. After training on the Reaper for a few months, his strength has improved very quickly. Bang bang bang. However, Bucky's riot also caused a huge backlash from the opposite crowd. When the first shot rang out, shots were fired one after another. Bucky's eyes shrank, his heart began to tremble, and the deep-rooted timid fear hit his heart at this moment, making his legs a little weak, but the next moment, he still faced the gunshots and rushed into the crowd. Then, a series of screams rose into the sky. Blood dripped on the ground, and the standing figure began to fall. In the end, only Bucky was left. He trembled and continued to move forward. There were 4 or 5 gun holes on a robe, which made his complexion change, and the huge pain made his expression a little distorted. Ha 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 ha. However, he laughed. For the first time, he discovered that what he had always been afraid of was not that kind of fear. He could become a strong man. After that, he actually started to move forward with bullet holes all over his body. He can still swing a knife and kill people. When the gun comes, he will endure the severe pain in his body and attack the latter frantically. When the speed is fast, he can kill the opponent before he shoots, and when it is slow, he can also cut the opponent abruptly with a single hit. I can be strong too. There are scars all over Bucky's body, but his mood is excited and his blood is boiling. Stepping towards the two at the top, Bucky's eyes showed a touch of firmness. Shanks, you are waiting for me, the treasure you owe me, the treasure map, I will not let go, wait for me to get it back. Bucky said firmly in his heart. Bucky's mind has undergone tremendous changes in this battle. The atmosphere on the Reaper, the blood of the enemy, and the environment of the great waterway made the soul that had been hidden in his heart for a long time finally awakened, and he began to move towards power. On the other hand, Drizzt clutched his forehead, a little helpless. Similarly, some pirates found his figure. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Attacked him, but just for a moment, they were surprised to find that there was an extra card in their hands. Magic. The pirates were a little surprised, and then grinned. Playing magic in this scene is really courting death. I really don't want to kill someone. Drizzt activated his ability, and the blood-red light enveloped him for 1,000 meters. The next moment, he stepped out of the siege of everyone and threw the cards in his hand at will. 50 or 60 people fell on the deck with their eyes white. There was no trace of blood or wounds, but the people who fell to the ground lost their breath. Likewise, Drizzy's target is the top two. But here, in the face of guns, he just threw a card easily and was able to kill the person on the opposite side. To him, playing cards were like hidden weapons, and the powerful arm strength allowed Drizzt to use playing cards as the most terrifying weapon. About half an hour later, Drizzt and Bucky met. They were face to face, staring at each other, with weird expressions on their faces. Captain, it's really cruel. Drizzt covered his forehead, looking at Bucky's blood. No, I feel good. Bucky said simply. Cool, please, how many pounds of blood have you left? Don't tell me the dozen holes on your body are decorations. Drizzt was completely speechless. Chapter 82-. Bucky's expression of pain was distorted, and the blood on his body kept leaving, dyeing the clothes outside bright red. But his fighting spirit was high, and his whole body was shaking with excitement. He felt that he was very cool at this moment. After so many years of living, he had never felt so good today. Ignoring Drizzt, Bucky strode up. 2 people, 1 for each. Drizzt stared blankly at Bucky's unusual appearance today, feeling a little weird in his heart. This boy, is something wrong today? Why does it seem like a person has changed? Then Drizzt followed closely, and 10 seconds later Bucky and Drizzt stood together, staring at the two in front. The 2 pirate captains looked at them with ugly expressions at the moment. Glancing down, I was shocked to find that the people on their pirate ship were either lying on the ground, or they were too scared to go forward. These 2 people, actually. Putting away the long sword in their hands, the 2 pirate captains stopped fighting in unison, and looked at the opposite side with a dignified expression. It was just 2 people that brought their 2 pirate ships to such a situation. At this moment, the 2 captains will naturally not fight again. They stared at each other with angry eyes, and their hearts were already full of anger. I'm going to kill them. Yuski, we'll talk about our battle later. Eugen strode forward, the knife in his hand clenched tightly, faster and faster. Okay, 1 person per person. Yuski also said loudly. Bucky and Drizzt exchanged glances, then strode forward together. The first one is mine. To Drizzy's surprise, Bucky seemed to be taking stimulants at the moment. He was so excited that he didn't look like it. He shouted and affected Eugen's. After being stunned for a moment, Drizzt also threw out the cards in his hand and moved towards the opposite Eugen's, letting the latter raise his knife to block him, making a dang sound. "Who are you two?" Eugen's shouted, speeding towards Drizzt. He wanted to cut down the nasty cowboy in front of him as fast as he could. "Death Pirates, Navigator, Drizzt. Reaper Pirates, Captain of the 1st Division, Bucky." Drizzt and Bucky both shouted and fought hard. Unlike the crew members, the two captains really worked hard. Their knives are extremely sharp, extremely fast, and powerful. Bucky raised his two knives to fight Yusky, and the knife on the opposite side was able to suppress both of his knives. This made Bucky's eyes a little shocked, and the captain was really extraordinary. In contrast to Bucky's weakness, Drizzt was simply suppressing the opponent, and he acted casually. Drizzt could easily dodge any knife from Eugen's, and then he threw a card at will, but the latter was sweating profusely, and the fragile-looking card hit his knife. There were golden sparks, and his wrists were shaking. "This kid's power is so great." Eugen's was very surprised. He opened his eyes wide and became cautious. But Drizzt, who was on the opposite side, jumped up, flicked his wrist, and 5 cards appeared. Then he slammed it, and the cards flew in an arc and circled towards him. Eugen's face changed greatly, and the long knife in his hand slashed left and right, trying to stop this terrifying card. But in the next moment, 2 cards were slammed into his shoulders, causing him to tremble, and bright red blood seeped out. Eugen's face changed again, and there was a hint of despair in his eyes. These 2 cards restricted his left and right hands, and the long knife in his right hand trembled as he let go and fell on the deck, making a dull sound. He looked at Drizzt, his eyes still filled with unspeakable anger. However, what greeted him was just a card, circling endlessly, piercing the air, and rushing into his eyes like a streamer. Then, his world fell into darkness. This card was inserted directly into the middle of his forehead, with a full half of its length going into it. Eugen's was easily dealt with by Drizzt in this way. The navigator, who was usually indifferent and lazy, showed a strong fighting power. His playing cards, before showing the ability of Devil Fruit, easily defeated the pirates with a bounty of 40 to 50 million. On Bucky's side, it seemed very difficult. In terms of swordsmanship, Bucky can be said to be a long way from this captain. He can only barely resist the man's attack, but he can't fight back. "What a fast knife, and its strength is much stronger than mine." Bucky's eyes were solemn, and sweat kept flowing from his forehead. Yusky kept slashing down, and his attack had turned into an airtight blade curtain, terrifying and unimaginable. Afterwards, his eyes narrowed, and he went towards Bucky's knife with a frantic attack. "His knives are about to shatter. When I cut off his 2 knives, the victory will be mine." Yusky's sharp eyes saw that there were cracks on Bucky's double knives. Dang 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 dang. A series of sounds of gold and iron came out, and Bucky kept retreating. The left and right hands holding the double knives were a little sore and numb from the powerful force, but they still insisted. Finally, after more than 10 seconds, there was a loud noise. Yusky's eyes flashed, and he shouted in his heart, "This is the time. Break it for me." Bang! After a sound, Bucky's whole body was shocked, his eyes widened. Broken. Yusky's eyes narrowed, the long knife clenched tightly in his hand, and the knife skill was activated. 1 knife flow, the horses divided. Huh! Like a gust of wind blowing, Yusky's long knife slid across Bucky's body quickly. Bucky's face was still blank at the moment, and Drizzt, who was watching the battle, squinted. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Shrinking, his expression changed greatly, and he shouted, "Bucky!" The next moment, Bucky reacted, and suddenly there were more than a dozen plates in his field of vision. He lowered his head and saw that his whole body, from the upper body and arms to the lower body and legs, was really like being divided. Was cut into more than 20 pieces, and each piece was about the same size. Yusky on the opposite side breathed a sigh of relief. No one could survive after being hit by him. He was very confident. This boy with a red nose is obviously not the opponent of this knife. Ah! Bucky roared in pain. He really felt the pain this time. His body was cut into dozens of pieces, and the severe pain all spread into the depths of his soul. But at this moment, an inexplicable message also entered his mind, causing him to be accompanied by pain and excitement in his heart at the same time. It turned out to be like this. It turned out to be like this. Bucky's eyes widened. He controlled the fruit ability, endured the severe pain, and reunited the body that was broken into more than 20 pieces. Then, in Yusuke's shocked eyes, he grabbed the long knife in the latter's hand and let out a low growl. Fractured. Chapter 83 Nature Department. With a bang, Yusuke's long knife shattered into countless plates, and then Bucky took a step forward and grabbed Yusuke's arm. Yusuke's eyes widened, thinking of the fate of the long knife just now, and a hint of panic appeared in his eyes. Fractured. There was a faint sound of boom. The air swayed slightly, and a faint mask appeared, covering a radius of 2 meters in front of Bucky. Whether it was Drizzt or Yusuke, who was caught by Bucky, his pupils contracted at this moment. With a sound of hum, in Drizzy's shocked eyes, countless tiny fragments appeared on Yusuke's body, and then with a bang, they turned into small particles and disappeared here. In front of Bucky's ability, Yusuke was really torn apart. Bucky's ability showed a terrifying scene at this moment. He was able to split everything he touched into 4 and 5 pieces. This ability made Drizzy's mouth open in surprise, and some were speechless. Ha 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 ha. Bucky, whose face was covered in blood and his body was also dyed red, raised his head to the sky and let out a series of laughter. Go back to the ship. Bucky shouted in high spirits. His strength has grown by leaps and bounds at this moment, and the new ability of the devil fruit has been developed, which makes him extremely happy. 3 minutes later, Drizzt helped Bucky to the Reaper. Doctor, come and see him. Drizzt kept Bucky on the deck, and the guy fell into a coma. Bucky, who was bleeding heavily, lay motionless on the boat. Luo and Mariah hurried over, took out the bullets after a little diagnosis, and then wrapped the latter into a mummy. This kid's life is quite big, and he won't die, Dylan said with a sigh as he looked at Bucky, who was carried back to the room. Hee, I believe them, Yongqing said with a smile, and then waved his hand. A gust of wind blew up on the 2 pirate ships next to him, and all the treasures were swept into the Reaper. Drizzt returned to the helm and began to steer the Reaper forward slowly. Soon, a month passed. Bucky has long been able to run around with a smile on his face and a white cloth bandage. Ha, Drizzt, the power of labor and capital is very powerful now. Bucky held the apple in his right hand, and with a little force, the apple split into 8 petals, and then flew in all directions, into the hands of everyone. Cut. Drizzt took the apple and bit it hard. Everyone else took it with a smile, and then slowly started to eat. Speaking of which, Bucky's ability is very convenient. In the future, when cutting fruits and even vegetables, blades will not need to use a knife. Bucky's devil fruit ability seems to be able to dissect matter and divide them into pieces. Perhaps, in the end, this ability can return matter to its original source, transforming their molecules and atoms. This is a terrifying ability that can annihilate everything. Of course, Bucky at the moment is only initially awakening this ability. To Alabasta, Drizzt said softly, seeing the island ahead. Everyone looked forward, and a beautiful country appeared in front of them. It was the first time they had seen such a beautiful and peaceful country since they sailed for a month. Alabasta is one of the few countries in the world that advocates peace. Their king is very kind and loved by the people. Moria introduced, this country is rich and vast, and has a high international status. According to legend, their king, the descendants of 20 kings, that is to say, the celestial dragons. What? Tianlongren, Dylan exclaimed in surprise, and glanced at Yongqing, who was not surprised, with a smile on his face. Heavenly dragon. There was a gloomy look on Luo's face. That person was also a heavenly dragon. This is really interesting news. Drizzy's mouth twitched with a smile, as if interested. Bucky was leaning on the boat with his chin in a daze, as if he was thinking about something, and he was not at all curious about the news. Then, half an hour later, the ship docked. Everyone disembarked, leaving Drizzt alone on the deck, and began to sleep again. Then let's part, and that's it. Yongqing smiled happily, then jumped off the boat and separated from the crowd. Moria and Robin were naturally another group, and the others walked together in twos and threes, all walking towards Alabasta. This island has a huge area. Compared with the small islands that pass by along the way, Alabasta is simply outrageous, and it will not be able to turn around for a while. Just as everyone was leaving, a pirate group slowly approached here. Look, boss, there's a pirate ship there. Not far away, there was a surprised voice, and Drizzt rolled over, grunting like thunder, but he didn't hear it. Hey, it turns out to be the Reaper pirates, it's really interesting. A gloomy voice sounded, faintly. It seemed that there was a sandstorm on the Reaper, and there were grains of sand on Drizzt's clothes. Captain, this is Alabasta, let's take a look first. Okay, let's act separately. I'm very interested in this country. Maybe it will be a good choice for us in the future. He smiled gloomily. It was fun. With an order, 4 or 5 people rushed forward and smashed Drizzt, who had fallen asleep. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Tai. What made the people on this pirate group amused was that the boy who had been sleeping for a long time still hadn't woken up. This kid is really courting death. Someone sneered and tied Drizzt to another pirate ship. I heard that their captain offered a bounty of 100 million yuan. This is a good step. It is also a good choice to step on this person's body. If you encounter it, then you can solve it by the way. The gloomy voice laughed. I don't know why, when I see this country in front of me, I feel like I'm at my home. The laughter from behind began to sound, all of which were flattering or mocking those of the Death God pirates. Captain, you are a natural type. It's easy to solve them, and then increase the bounty of our pirate group. Thinking about it makes me a little excited. Then, isn't it good for us to occupy this country? With a smoking cigar in his mouth, the captain was dressed in a robe, and in one hand was a hook of pure gold, with a blue gleam on the hook, and the poison smeared on it, giving off a dangerous light. Go find them and bring them to me. The captain snorted coldly, then stepped up and walked towards the town in Alabasta. This country really fascinated him. If this place is turned into a desert, it must be very good. The captain's eyes flickered with light, and he thought to himself. Chapter 84 The cigar in his mouth drifted towards the rear with thick smoke, and the captain raised his feet and walked towards the town. There was a cruel and cold light in his eyes. This was a real pirate, and at first glance, it was not a kind of good. In Alabasta, Yongqing walked freely in this country. After passing the towns near the coast in front, you will reach the 3 main cities in Alabasta, Albana, Juba, and Rain. This island is called Shungding Island, and its scope is very large. After 3 days of hard work, Yongqing came to the rainy land. It was rainy and rainy all day long, and the weather was always gloomy. The plants were lush and growing well. Desert look. Alabasta at this time, very beautiful, very beautiful. People in towns live and work in peace and contentment with smiles. There is a powerful national escort here, and there are naval forces stationed in the nearby waters, and pirates dare not come here at will. Therefore, the safety of residents in cities and towns has been greatly guaranteed. Yongqing strolled in the rain, spent 3 days walking around here, shook his head and left here. He didn't find anything worthy of his attention here. 7 days later, Yongqing came to the country of Alabasta, Albana. The center of the city is the Palace of Alabasta. From a distance, Yongqing can see the soldiers stationed around, holding spears. Their faces are majestic and strict, and they are very prosperous. He continued to walk in this lively capital, paying more attention to the blacksmiths around him. His western sword was given to Ace, and he was missing a weapon at the moment. Although it does not affect the combat effectiveness, a weapon can also bring him a lot of unexpected help. And this time, he also wants to make a special weapon, so he has high requirements for the skills of the blacksmith. Come here to see, he is just trying his luck. An hour later, Yang Qing's eyes lit up and found a blacksmith workshop that made weapons. This is Adu, Tianfang City, responsible for the smelting and shaping of weapons. The blacksmith is a burly tough guy with a national character face and bulging muscles, and he looks very powerful with a sledgehammer in his hand. Can you smelt materials here? Yang Qing walked over and asked. Smelting materials. Let's see what kind of materials you want. The blacksmith stopped his movements and asked, wiping his sweat. Yang Qing took out a cloth bag from his arms, handed it over, smiled and said, a new type of fusion material, a very special material. The blacksmith was puzzled and opened the bag, then opened it and glanced at it. His pupils shrank immediately, and he glared at Yang Qing. This is the powder of Halu stone. Mixture with Bazan steel. How did you get it? The blacksmith was shocked. He knew very well what such a material meant. Halu stone is a special material. It contains the breath of the sea and has a strong restraint effect on those who are capable. It is also indestructible, and Bazan steel is a kind of fine steel for making weapons. The two are combined in among them. Combined with other materials, there is a great chance to create an extraordinary weapon. Yang Qing smiled, but didn't answer, just asked, can it be smelted into a weapon? You just need to smelt its shape. Blacksmith took a deep look at Yang Qing and nodded. Of course, you can pour this powder into the prepared mold, then add other materials, and burn it with a strong fire. It can be formed. It's just a formed weapon. I can't guarantee its density and hardness. Yang Qing's eyes lit up, and then smiled. You just need to fuse it together and make it into a shape. The material, you look at it and add it. The price is not a problem. The blacksmith was taken aback for a moment, then nodded. He didn't ask too much. It was his pursuit to be able to make such a weapon. At least he had never seen anyone who could grind Halu stone into powder. This person must have some strange means. Afterwards, the blacksmith even threw aside what he was supposed to do, and then picked out the right carbon stone to melt it perfectly. After a full hour of tossing, the blacksmith was sweating profusely to collect all the materials. Then he started to ignite, and turned his head to say to Yang Qing. Draw the shape of the weapon you want with blueprints. No problem, right? Yang Qing nodded, found the banknotes, and then began to draw and change on the drawings. Half an hour later, he handed the blueprint to the blacksmith. After the blacksmith took it, he was stunned and asked strangely, this is not a normal knife style. This is a sword, Yang Qing said with a smile. The blacksmith was speechless, and then started tossing the mold according to the drawing, and the flame was burning slowly. This is a strange charcoal fire that can burn more and more vigorously with the passage of time, and the temperature is very high. Only in this way can Yang Qing's special material be melted. Soon, the mold was ready, and the blacksmith began to carefully add the powder of the sea-floor stone and the steel to the mold. As the temperature of the flame increased, the powder of the sea-floor stone began to melt, emitting a crystal-clear blue light. It was like the color of the sea, which was then fused with Bazan steel. After that, the blacksmith sweated profusely and put the various materials he prepared into it. The flames were burning, and for 5 full hours, when the sky was dark, the shape of the sword finally appeared in the mold. This sword is about 3 feet 3 inches long, and the body of the sword exudes a crystal blue light. At this moment, it is still in the state of liquid and body. There is a strange streamer flowing in it. Under the sunlight, it looks like a dragon. What is the name of this sword? The blacksmith finally asked with a sigh of relief. Longchen sword, Yang Qing said with a smile. Looking at the long sword that was slowly becoming firmer and harder in the mold, a light flashed in his eyes. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The sword is crystal clear, accompanied by the vision of a dragon. The whole is transparent and exudes blue light, like the sea under the sunlight, sparkling. At the handle, it is composed of Bazan steel and strange materials taken out by the blacksmith. It exudes complicated and mysterious threads. It seems to be very refreshing and cold when held on it. Longchen, what a great name. The blacksmith's eyes lit up, and then he saw the flame below flicker and finally extinguished. Without any delay, the blacksmith put the long sword into the ice water that had been prepared. Scoff. White smoke was everywhere, and the ice water bottomed out at a speed visible to the naked eye. The temperature on this sword was unimaginable. After half an hour, the white smoke dissipated. The blacksmith put the Longchen sword on the steel plate that had been prepared, and raised the hammer in his hand. It began to smash toward the iron sword in a strange trajectory. Chapter 85 Crocodile. Bang bang bang. A series of sounds continued to come out. The Longchen sword seemed to become narrower and thinner under the hammer, and the sharp blade began to appear. The ice blue light became deeper and condensed. The wandering dragon circling endlessly, it seems to be constantly wandering. It was another 2 hours after the full knock, the sky was already dark, and the stars appeared. The blacksmith just breathed a sigh of relief, stopped, and then said to Yang Qing, "Come to pick up the sword in 3 days, and I will fight for him." Yang Qing nodded and turned to leave. The sword is almost ready, but it still needs a final step, but it will take time. He could naturally see that this blacksmith had his own unique craftsmanship and would not let him see it. Yang Qing couldn't understand the technique of percussion in a strange trajectory and the details, but he could see clearly that this blacksmith was a skilled and outstanding person. On the second day, another guest was welcomed on the land of Albana. The man had a ferocious appearance, a golden hook in his right hand, and a smoking cigar in his mouth. He walked slowly to the streets of the town, looking at the palace in the distance, with a trace of greed in his eyes. How attractive it would be if it were a desert. The man murmured, and then he shook his head again. It's a pity that I'll be leaving here soon. On the third day, Yang Qing came to the street. The blacksmith was waiting there according to the promise. His expression was a little excited, and seemed very happy. When he saw Yang Qing, the blacksmith beckoned. "Is the sword ready?" Yang Qing asked. "Well, it's even more perfect than I imagined. I specially made a perfect scabbard for it." The blacksmith took off the long strip on his back, and then said, "It's too sharp. It must be made of deep sea nan only sea lane Yafang can cover up the killing intent and sharpness in it, otherwise, it is easy to hurt people." Slowly, the blacksmith removed the cloth bag, revealing the scabbard inside. Yang Qing narrowed his eyes and saw that the scabbard was inlaid with a few dark blue gems, and other places were engraved with mysterious and beautiful complex runes, which seemed to have a mysterious sense of the sea, and it was very beautiful. This is the unique texture of Nansili wood. The tentacles are cold, smooth and slender, very beautiful and wonderful. The blacksmith introduced a sentence, and then he slowly opened the scabbard. With the slight sound, Yang Qing saw the real body of the Longchen sword. The dragon wandered constantly, the blades on both sides were as thin as cicada wings, and the blade was almost transparent, exuding a dim light. "It's so beautiful," Yang Qing exclaimed. "I never imagined that the material after the fusion of Halu stone would have such a reaction. This sword is definitely the most beautiful sword in the world." The blacksmith also praised, "What amazes me even more is that his sharpness degree and firmness and hardness." Quote, "And, because of the sea tower stone, he has the power to suppress those with the ability of the devil fruit. This sword is simply the most incredible sword. The handle is made of 100 cut steel and various types of unparalleled fusion. There is no sea tower stone. Even those with devil fruit abilities can use it." The blacksmith introduced that Yang Qing stretched out his hand and grabbed the handle of the sword. "It's so light," Yang Qing exclaimed. With the power he just used, he actually felt that this sword was very light. The weight, 3 jins and 6 taels, is definitely the most lightweight among the swords. Because of the weight, its speed is definitely the fastest. The blacksmith said confidently. "Not bad." Yang Qing stabbed a sword sharply, and the air in front of him was full of phantoms, and there were 10 sword shadows. Then suddenly, they all folded into one good sword. Put away the scabbard. Yang Qing stuffed the long sword into the scabbard, then wrapped it in cloth and carried it on his back. "How much?" 5 million baileys. the blacksmith said without hesitation. Yang Qing was taken aback, it was so expensive. But he didn't say anything. He took 5 million Baileys from his arms, gave them to the blacksmith, turned around and left here. The acquisition of the new sword made Yang Qing quite happy, but when he walked out of the kilometer, the expression on his face began to disappear, and a gloomy look appeared on his face. Who are you? Looking at the big man blocking the road in front of him, Yang Qing narrowed his eyes. The old-looking man in front of him reminded him of a familiar figure. Crocodile, the bounty is 65 million Baileys. Crocodile took a breath of the cigar in his mouth, exhaled the smoke, and introduced himself. Stop me, what's the matter? Yang Qing asked coldly. You, Lucifer, the god of death, has a bounty of 100 million Baileys, which is nearly 40 million more than me. Crocodile laughed suddenly, a hideous smile appeared on his ugly face. You are such a young kid, it's even higher than my bounty. You don't agree. Yang Qing raised her eyebrows and looked at Crocodile. Pirates come to the Great Channel for 3 things: wealth, fame, and power. And the way to get these 3 points is undoubtedly the easiest way to kill a fellow who has a higher bounty than his own. So, you found me. Yang Qing sarcastically said, this stupid person actually thinks that he will be killed at will. Inexplicably, have you been underestimated? I didn't come to you on purpose. I just found your pirate ship when we docked, and there was a cowboy man who was sleeping soundly. Crocodile said casually. Drizzt. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, a cold look flashed in his eyes. You put him. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. What's wrong? Are you worried about your companion? Don't worry, I just let my subordinates bind him. Worrying about him? Yang Qing suddenly laughed. No, I'm just worried about your subordinates. Could someone foolishly accidentally tie Drizzt and subdue him? It has to be said that such naive people are really rare. You know what, Crocodile? Huh? The latter asked suspiciously. You are really arrogant, Yang Qing said seriously. Crocodile's face shuddered, the smile on his face began to disappear, the wind was blowing beside him, and some sand and dust began to swirl. I have to say, the god of death, I hate you. I'm not arrogant, you'll know in a moment. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed, then smiled. Really? The sandstorm suddenly increased, and a large piece of sand began to gather, and then swept towards Yang Qing quickly. Sandstorm. Crocodile spit out 2 words coldly. Chapter 86-. The dust in the sky suddenly became larger, the sky became gloomy, and there were fewer pedestrians on the street, making the place a little empty. The sandstorm swept here, obscuring Crocodile's figure, making a rustling sound, and dust everywhere, making people unable to open their eyes. Pedestrians on the entire street were squinted by the wind. They couldn't see what was happening in the empty space ahead. Talking to each other, people ran towards their homes. This wind and sand is so strange that it is no longer suitable for travel. Yang Qing stood there, squinting at the front. The storm is getting bigger and bigger, and in just 5 seconds, it has become more than 10 meters high and 3 meters wide, and it is rapidly rotating towards itself. During the rotation of the sandstorm, more sand and dust are attracted into it, which brings a huge attraction force. It actually made it difficult for Yang Qing to run away for a while, and the speed of his whole body decreased. It's interesting. With a smile, Yang Qing snapped his fingers with a pop, and with a bang, within a kilometer radius, a layer of light shrouded him. Merely, the sandstorm wants to deal with me too. With a blank face, he stepped into the swirling sandstorm. Yang Qing's figure was like a sharp sword, slicing through the swirling sandstorm, and then passed through directly to the front of Crocodile. In the latter's surprised eyes, he slammed a punch, hitting his face fiercely. I said, you are too arrogant. Yang Qing's voice popped out of his mouth, and the punch hit Crocodile in the face. It doesn't work for you. A hint of shock appeared on Crocodile's face. His right face turned into sand and was beaten in all directions, and returned to its original shape 3 seconds later. Looking at Yang Qing, do you have the power of a devil fruit? Nature, It's really troublesome. Yang Qing frowned, dodging Crocodile's right hand, and then kicked it violently. When the latter couldn't react in time, he kicked the latter directly. Head. There is no doubt that Crocodile turned into sand again. This time, he didn't even pay attention to the head that turned into sand, and then the golden hook in his left hand slashed towards Yang Qing mercilessly. Eyes widened, the golden hook that was drawn straight towards him was actually a meal, and then bent backward at an incredible angle. Yang Qing took a step and hit Crocodile in the stomach again. This time, the latter didn't have time to elementalize, but the beaten body bent and stuck out his tongue. You boy! There was a trace of anger on Crocodile's face, and this punch made him spit out the bitter water, and the strength was really great. His whole body turned into sand, and then he rushed towards the latter. He wanted to wrap the stinky boy in front of him and suffocate him to death. The slight sound of boom sounded, and Crocodile's sand was actually a meal, and then it was completely bound in place. Yang Qing stepped out, and a large piece of sand spontaneously split open a door, giving him the passage. The gap between our strengths is huge, you'd better not anger me, otherwise the end will be miserable. Yang Qing said lightly, and continued to walk forward. Crocodile's face was very ugly. His sand was out of his control, but was controlled by the other party. This strange scene shocked him. Boy, you are too arrogant, I am a natural type. Crocodile roared. He bent down sharply, touched his right hand on the ground, and then terrifying fluctuations spread. Within 100 meters in front of him, all the stone slabs all trembled and turned into soft sand. Erosion of samsara. Crocodile's gloomy voice came out, and the streets within 100 meters in front of him were all turned into sand. With a bang, all the objects were absorbed by water, and a large sandstorm appeared here, covering the sky and the sun. The strange fluctuations of the stock kept advancing and came to Yang Qing's feet. Yang Qing's expression changed, his feet slammed, jumped 10 meters, and jumped to the empty house next to him, but the wave followed closely, and within a breath, the whole room turned into sand grain. This terrifying fluctuation seems to be able to turn everything it touches into dry sand, which is terrifying and weird. Even Yang Qing, for a while, did not dare to touch the grains of sand at will. The natural system was really scary. 10 seconds later, Yang Qing's 300-meter radius turned into a desert. Among them, there were humans who had no time to leave, and were instantly turned into mummified corpses by the fluctuation, and then shattered into powder. Crocodile's ability is terrifyingly terrifying, and his attack range is also terrifying. Crocodile. There was a hint of anger in Yang Qing's eyes. He didn't want to take action on this person, but the latter provoked him so arrogantly. Sandstorm. This time, the sandstorm, which was even bigger than the previous one, covered the sky densely. Crocodile had a cigar in his mouth, and his figure was looming in the sand and dust. Almost swept half of the town, causing countless civilians to flee in fear. The sandstorm covered the sky, and then under the control of Crocodile, it swept towards Yang Qing. This scene is simply earth-shattering. Such a huge sandstorm can only appear in the windy Gobi Desert or in the desert. Crocodile actually made it himself. Get up. Suddenly, Yang Qing patted the room under his feet, and with a bang, a large swath of houses rushed into the sky, heading towards the dusty sky. I can control any object I touch indirectly or directly, but this sandstorm is too big. Yang Qing's eyes flickered. The sandstorm in front of him was indeed overwhelming. Facing such a natural weather, it was difficult to resist, especially if it was the other party dispatched. Unlike Dorig's 1, Yang Qing paid almost 3. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. 2/3 of his physical strength completely cleared the entire sky. This sandstorm, if he uses the same means, he can also deal with it, but he doesn't think it's worth it. What kind of person is Dorag? Who is Crocodile? The pride of the strong makes him disdain to waste his energy. There are other ways to deal with it, it's just a sandstorm. Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and he saw a fountain covering an area of 30 meters not far away. Water can deal with him. The footsteps moved, and Yang Qing's figure suddenly turned into a phantom, heading towards the fountain. Want to run? Crocodile took a sip of the cigar, then controlled the dust and chased towards Yang Qing. 10 seconds later, the sandstorm chased behind Yang Qing and surrounded him in the middle. Covering the sky, even the surrounding air seems to be much thinner. At the same time, Yang Qing took a hard shot at the water droplets in the fountain. Chapter-81 Water Dragon, get me up. Roar. In just a moment, a water dragon in the fountain swirled and rushed out, and then roared up to the sky, rushing towards the sandstorm that filled the sky. Accompanied by countless blue sparkling water splashes floating, the water dragon turned into a streamer, and slammed into the sky. On the sandstorm, suddenly, countless water droplets splashed around. Water. Crocodile's originally calm face became extremely ugly. The sand and dust in the sky shook, and after being invaded by water droplets, it seemed to have become much heavier, and it crashed down onto the ground, no longer under the control of Crocodile. At this moment, Yang Qing's right hand waved violently, and in the shock, the water droplet that was falling at the moment was caught in the fan. With a sound of boom, countless water droplets suddenly turned into streams of light, and attacked towards Crocodile in the distance. At this moment, without a trace of attack power, the round water droplets became the most terrifying hidden weapon. Puff puff puff. It was just an instant. After Crocodile made a quick dodge in horror, he was still swept away. There was blood on his arms and face. A full 5 drops of water hit him. Elementalization does not work, and evasion is difficult. At this moment, he finally realized the horror of the other party. This kid is too strong. Crocodile's heart was very solemn, and his face became cautious. At this moment, he finally realized deeply that what is called the natural system is not invincible. When Xia Guo faced ordinary enemies, he stood still, and the enemies couldn't even take him. When he activates his ability, he can instantly devour enemies and turn them into mummified corpses. However, at this moment, when he met the person in front of him, he was shocked to find that his rustling fruit was not invincible. His weird ability seems to be able to control everything he touches, even my sand, but he doesn't seem to be able to control a wide range of attacks. Crocodile has experienced many battles, and he is naturally not an idiot. No, it's also possible that he despised me from the bottom of his heart and didn't even bother to use his full strength. What he is carrying on his back should be a knife, which means that he is still a swordsman, but until now, he has not been seen pulling it out. Crocodile's face was very ugly. He judged it very clearly. The person in front of him seemed to disdain fighting him at all. His counterattack was just a playful game. Damn it! Crocodile was angry, and a despised anger rose in his heart. I want you to taste my power. Bending down again, Crocodile slammed his right hand on the ground. The ground slammed for a while, and there were ripples like lake water, and then a large area of land was sucked dry by him and turned into a desert. Go to hell. Desert, sunflower, Crocodile shouted, and the surroundings centered on Yang Qing actually began to spin, and the sand grains formed a whirlpool like seawater. Swamp, or whirlpool. Yang Qing's face changed. This natural fruit is really powerful, and it was hard to prevent. He was placed in this whirlpool at the moment, and he felt that he could not escape, as if he was being held firmly by a strange suction. Hold on, the more you move, the deeper you fall. What's even more terrifying is that this weird vortex seems to be able to absorb the water on his body. If it goes on like this, if he waits for his whole body to fall into it, I am afraid that he will become a mummified corpse. Crocodile. Yang Qing's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Natural guy, it's really dangerous. The guy in front of him, just relying on this devil fruit ability, is enough to offer a bounty of 100 million. Yang Qing's evaluation of Crocodile is very high. This is a relatively terrifying opponent, and a negligence, even him, may fall. Master yourself. With a sound of hum, Yang Qing's body began to slowly float out into the air. After 3 seconds, he stood on the ground and looked at Crocodile with cold eyes. I'm starting to look at you. Really, Crocodile had a smile on his face, but his heart was even more solemn. He could see that the young man on the opposite side was about to use his real power. This guy is definitely more than 100 million. Fine beads of sweat climbed on Crocodile's forehead, and the sand crocodile began to get nervous. In this battle, it is possible to die. Just as this sword has just been cast, I'll try its power. Yangqing slowly took off the long wrap on the back, and said lightly, I only made one sword, I died, but don't blame me. It's that sword. Crocodile's eyes narrowed into slits, staring intently. Choke. The long sword was unsheathed, and Yangqing slowly pulled out the Longchen sword. The icy blue light was beautiful under the sunlight, and the blade as thin as a cicada's wings exuded a strange charm. The long sword slid through the air, making a slight noise, and then pointed directly at Crocodile. Life or death depends on your level, Yangqing said coldly. Damn it, Crocodile shouted, and he activated his ability to attack the young man on the opposite side. Who is he? He is Crocodile, who will he be afraid of? No, he is not afraid of anyone. Even if he loses, he will risk his life to fight. This is the spirit of a man. Desert Sword. The sand in front of Crocodile gathered to form a huge treasure sword, with a strange light flashing on it, and then slashed down towards Yangqing, splitting into the air, making a loud sound. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. At the same time, Yangqing suddenly stepped out with his right foot. In just one step, Yangqing's figure flickered and disappeared, and Crocodile's pupils tightened. So fast. Then, in the space of 5 meters in front, there was a flash, and Yangqing's figure appeared. His right hand began to tremble slightly, and the ice-blue long sword was screaming happily. Yan. The desert sword slammed forward and immediately slashed. Crocodile's heart beat faster, and his blood boiled at this moment. At this time, he felt the crisis of life and death. The next moment, Yangqing appeared 1 meter in front of him, and then the long sword turned lightly, drawing a graceful arc and cutting towards him. PFF'd. The sound was very slight, like a falling needle. Crocodile's eyes trembled, and the desert sword smashed on the ground and dissipated with a bang, not touching Yangqing's body at all. Okay, what a fast sword. The blood flowed out quickly and dripped on the ground. Crocodile's eyes kept trembling, and then he fell to the ground. Halu Stone, a sword made of it. Chapter-81-100. The voice in his heart sounded. Before the sword entered his body, he was already elementalized. However, in front of the sword, it was completely ineffective, and it seemed that even his own abilities were sealed. At that moment, it was a little weak. My physical strength is too poor. Devil fruit, at that moment, became a burden. Crocodile closed his eyes, and he had a very clear judgment of himself at this moment. Some of the previous ideas were completely overturned. The king's army is here. Yangqing stood behind Crocodile, turned and glanced at the latter. Are you still alive? You are lucky. Then, he stepped out of here. After Yangqing left here, a figure came to Crocodile nervously, looked around, then looked at Crocodile on his shoulders sweating profusely, and quickly left here. Boss, don't be in trouble. The figure was very frightened in his heart. He just watched the battle not far away. That young man is really scary. Even the captain of the nature department is not his opponent. Crocodile was lying on the back of the figure, and his consciousness fell into a blur. His stomach went up to the left mouth, a long blood stain appeared on it, and the blood was flowing out rapidly. A minute later, the king's army came to the place where the two fought before. When they saw the scene of the whole street, their faces showed a shocked expression. Nearly 2/3 of the street turned into desert. This terrifying scene made the leading general's face become solemn. It's a natural rustling fruit. Leading general confirmed. His eyes flickered. The current recipient of Shasha's fruit power is Crocodile with a bounty of 65 million. Has this newcomer actually come to Alabasta? Block the scene, I will report to His Majesty the King. The general shouted loudly, and then quickly left here. In the royal palace of Alabasta, The solemn King Cobra quietly listened to the report of the arrival, and then thought for a while before saying, "According to what you said, I am afraid that Crocodile encountered a strong enemy, and the latter a battle was waged." Quote, "It's terrifying, the Nature Department, turning 2/3 of the entire street into a desert. Yes, it is very dangerous for such vicious pirates to hide in our city," the general said with a serious look. "Inform the Marines stationed nearby. I am afraid that it is difficult for us to deal with such pirates only with our national strength." A look of helplessness appeared on Cobra's face. Although Alabasta claims to be peaceful, this peace is guaranteed by the Marines. Their national strength is not so strong. "Yes," the general responded and left here quickly. "Alabasta is guarded and protected by Marines. In the face of such vicious pirates, they will definitely not slack off. For such a thing, only informing the Navy is the most appropriate plan." 7 days later, Crocodile sat up with a gloomy face. His body was tied with white gauze. He carefully recalled that battle, absorbed the experience from it, and made himself stronger. "Boss, we found Nico Robin." At this moment, someone whispered in his ear. Nicole Robin. Crocodile's eyes narrowed. If he remembered correctly, this girl happened to be in the Death God Pirates at the moment, but would he be afraid? There was a smile in his eyes. He landed in this country precisely because there was a huge secret hidden in this country, and he just heard the news from Nico Robin. This devil's son seems to be able to read historical texts just right. Maybe it will help me in my plans in the near future. There was a hint of insidiousness in Crocodile's eyes. Send someone to contact her. "Yes, boss." Then he looked out the window, at the beautiful scenery, and sighed. When the injury is healed, he will start. That damn boy. Clenching his fists, Crocodile was very unwilling, but there was nothing he could do. That young boy is too strong. He is very self-aware. After a big battle, he clearly knows that he is not the opponent's opponent. After another 3 days, Yang Qing came to the Reaper, and the first thing he saw was Drizzy's figure, still lying on the deck, sound asleep, and beside him, a dozen people were tied up. A serious pirate. "I don't know how long I have been hungry, all of them are yellow-faced, thin and listless." "Ha ha." Yang Qing chuckled lightly, showing no courtesy towards Drizzt, and kicked him with one kick. "Wake up." Drizzt woke up, rubbed his eyes, and seemed sleepy. "It's the boss, where are they?" Drizzt asked. "You ask me, what do I want to ask you?" Yang Qing rolled his eyes. "It seems that Alabasta is too big, and these people haven't come back yet. Take a few days off, and when they come back, we'll leave here." 3 days later, Luo and Glades returned to the boat. One of them was taciturn, the other was honest, and neither of them could say a word. Instead, they bought a lot of ingredients and carried large packages on their backs. In the afternoon, Bucky and Dylan's came back, and the two of them made a lot of noise all the way, but it seemed very lively. "I said, I'll take that thing, and it's better to grab it directly. It takes so much effort. We are pirates, pirates," Bucky said very loudly. "This is Alabasta, you idiot." Dylan's was furious. "You idiot. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading." "Stupid, I don't want to tell you anymore. If you grab it and run, don't you? Besides, will the great Bucky captain be afraid of their king's army?" Bucky sneered. "Idiot, I don't want to talk to you." Dylan's gave up directly. "You're an idiot." The two were arguing hotly, and a smile appeared on the corner of Yang Qing's mouth, but the two of them could get along well. It seems that their relationship is progressing quite quickly. On the second day, Mariah and Robin also returned. "How is it?" "Nothing happened, right?" Yang Qing asked casually. "There is no big thing, but there is one small thing." Robin's eyes flashed and he replied softly. "Huh." Yang Qing looked at Robin. "There are people who call themselves Crocodile and want to invite me to join them." Robin smiled. "Oh, Crocodile." Yang Qing's eyes flashed and he nodded, with a hint of coldness on the corner of his mouth. "It seems that the pain for this guy is not enough. Next time, I must kill this kid. 10 minutes later, when everyone was finished repairing, Yang Qing gave an order and was ready to set off. Drizzt took the helm, Bucky and Law spread the sails, and after a shout, the Reaper began to sail in the sea, slowly moving towards the distance. Chapter 89. Are you awake? By the way, not far from our ship, is there a pirate ship? Yang Qing suddenly remembered and asked Drizzt. Ah, yes, I accidentally broke it. Drizzt rubbed his head embarrassedly and said. Yang Qing smiled and said nothing. Drizzt took a peek at the former's face and sighed. It's a good chance that the captain didn't find out about his embarrassment, but he was kidnapped while he was sleeping. What a shame. The Reaper slowly started to set off, and when they sailed 10 miles, a warship appeared in front of them, heading towards them against the wind. Boss, found the Marines. Drizzt shouted, and there was no nervousness in his tone. Oh, dodge, if you can't dodge it, sink it. Yang Qing waved, not caring. Drizzt responded, singing a strange tune, and began to maneuver the boat with ease. The Navy warship in the distance saw the target and had already started firing artillery shells. Boom boom boom. A series of cannonballs hit the Reaper with streaks, but Drizzt easily avoided it, not even hitting a single shot. Even the people sitting on the boat didn't even have the slightest fluctuation. On a naval ship. Lord Colonel, that ship seems to be able to predict the traces of shells, and we missed a single shot. The soldier reported loudly with a solemn expression. Reaper pirates, the colonel said solemnly, then waved his hand. Since he has escaped, there is no need to pay attention to him. Then he said deeply, our goal is to hide the crocodile gang in Alabasta. I hope this guy is smarter and doesn't cause me any trouble. The two ships passed by, the Reaper gradually drifted away, and the naval warship began to approach the coast of Alabasta. Compared with the difficult Death God pirates, the Marines undoubtedly chose the more important crocodile to deal with. After all, the purpose of the colonel stationed here is to maintain peace and stability in Alabasta. Boss, where do we go next? Drizzt shouted leisurely on the Reaper. Well, let's go to Mogu Town. You won't stop along the way, you are wasting too much time here. Yang Qing said without hesitation, his eyes flashed with a hint of meaning. Next, there will be an unimaginable event. The war. Really? Dylan smiled. I'm ready. 3 months later, Mogu Town welcomed a new batch of guests. In the first half of the Great Waterway, Mogu Town is a small town built by pirates. There are pirates gathered here from all directions, so the chaos here is abnormal. Fighting and fighting are the most common things. Especially as this place is a transit point for pirates, even the Navy can't do anything about it. Pirates, there are so many. Dylan exclaimed. No matter where he was in the past, he had never seen so many pirates here. It is indeed a town built by pirates. The Reaper gradually approached the harbor, under the guidance of the town thief, and then stopped. Yang Qing led everyone off the boat and then approached Mogu Town. Does your kid have eyes? How dare you hit me? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. As soon as they got off the boat, the quarrel between the two came over. Everyone turned their heads and saw that the sound was coming from the bar, and they couldn't help but stop. I'm sorry, is it useful? Who am I? I'm the Hammer Rhodes with a bounty of 35 million. Bang! With a loud bang, a figure was knocked out of the bar with blood, and then collapsed on the ground and struggled twice, but there was no movement. When Yang Qing and the others looked over, they found that the man's eyes turned white, he had lost his breath, and he was clearly dead. How cruel, Bucky murmured. Ha ha. Yang Qing smiled, then pushed open the door of the bar and led the crowd inside. Someone was kicked out of the bar just now, and the next moment someone pushed open the door and walked in. This scene immediately made people raise their eyebrows, and all their eyes moved to the door. Immediately afterwards, they saw a young man of about 16 or 17 striding in. As he entered, 7 people in a row entered the bar. Who do you know? Which pirate group is it? The pirates looked at each other and asked each other secretly. But almost everyone shook their heads, not knowing the origin of this pirate group. This scene made the pirates more cautious. Generally speaking, as long as the pirates who can come to Mogu Town have a foundation, they can be found out, but this pirate group is strangely unmanned. No, how is this possible? Impossible, absolutely impossible to have such a pirate group. Are they newcomers? Everyone thought it was strange, so they kept silent for a while, ignoring Yongqing and the others. But 3 minutes later, when Yongqing and his group all sat on the table and asked for drinks, a voice exploded the entire tavern. "Hey, you guys here, who knows how to get to the island?" Bucky exclaimed. The whole bar was quiet, and the next moment, laughter spread all over the place. Sky Island. Ha 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 ha, they actually want to go to the Sky Island. No way, I'm dying of laughter. Are you dreaming? An empty island? Now I'm sure, they must be newcomers, and only newcomers can ask such stupid questions. There was laughter in the bar, causing the pirates on the street to stop and watch. When the people on the street figured it out, they also laughed, and they shook their heads and said nothing. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. How could anyone even think there would be empty islands? How could there be islands in the sky? How stupid and naive. Our record pointer points to the empty island. Drizzt said loudly. Record pointer. Point to empty island. Stupidly wanting to keep following the course of the pointer. Ha ha ha, are these newcomers dreaming of getting the treasure of One Piece? It's making me laugh. I laughed so hard. There are still people talking about dreams these days. Ha ha ha, it's so funny. Everyone in the bar talked in a few words, without exception, mocking the Death God pirates. Boss, this. Bucky was a little depressed, and Drizzt couldn't figure out what was going on. Dylan's clenched his fists quietly, but was stopped by Yongqing shaking his head. Just a bunch of scum. Come here, I'll tell you where the empty island is. At this moment, a voice came over. His eyes were cold, and he pointed to Bucky. Everyone saw that the man was sitting on the bar with his back to them. Bucky was stunned for a moment, then ran over, waiting for the answer expectantly. To everyone's surprise, the figure turned around suddenly, spilled all the wine in the glass on Bucky's face, and then asked softly, "Are you sober?" This. Chapter 90 found Luo. Everyone was stunned, and everyone on the Death God clenched their fists and stood up, with anger flashing in their eyes. Sit down. Only Yongqing sat on the chair, his expression became gloomy. When everyone else sat down, endless killing intent flashed in his eyes, and he coldly shouted at Bucky, who was in a daze, "Bucky." Huh. Bucky replied blankly. He didn't seem to have reacted. Kill him. Bucky finally came to his senses, anger flashed in his eyes, and he punched forward with an unceremonious punch. With a bang, the figure in front of him slid away, and Bucky's punch hit the bar, causing the entire bar it was torn apart and became a ruin. The man finally reacted, and when he saw the miserable end of the bar, his face was horrified. This red-nosed clown-like person in front of him actually smashed the bar into pieces with one punch. You, the man said twice, but at the next moment, when he was about to dodge, Bucky grabbed his arm, and the clown grabbed his arm. The man struggled hard, but couldn't break free. Go to hell. Bucky's eyes flashed cold and ruthless, and with endless anger, this hateful person dared to play with him and sprinkle wine on his face. Fractured. With a bang, Bucky's right hand shattered. This scene stunned everyone. The laughter stopped, the bar became quiet, and the next moment, Bucky's palm touched the man's body. With a sound of boom, the air circle spread out and enveloped the man's body, and then under a shock, the latter's terrified eyes, together with the surrounding chairs and objects, all turned into pieces. Who else? Bucky roared, a loud voice that silenced the entire bar. Amazing, this guy. His fruit ability is terrifying. What kind of fruit is this? Setiras, who offered a bounty of 40 million, was killed instantly by him. Who is this guy? Everyone in the bar was sweating profusely, completely shocked by Bucky. Since it doesn't make sense for you to use reason, you can only use your fists. Yang Qing's figure sounded faintly at this moment. We are going to the empty island. He raised the wine glass on the table, then drank it, and finally placed the wine glass heavily on the table with a thud. It doesn't matter whether you believe it or not. But Yang Qing glanced around, with a mocking smile on his face. I hope you all remember one thing. Don't show disbelief in front of me, or else. A cruel expression appeared on Yang Qing's face. Bucky also walked back to the table at this moment and sat down firmly. There was still wine on his face, but at this moment, no one felt ashamed of him. We'll die. The moment Bucky sat down, Yang Qing's cold voice came out of his mouth. The bar was quiet, and the needles could be heard. Everyone seemed to be frozen, and some people began to secretly turn over the bounty orders that had been thrown everywhere, looking for the identities of the Death God pirates. Who is it? Who is it? They are definitely not an ordinary pirate group. Absolutely not. That red-nosed clown, too powerful, at least 60 million bounty, no, even 80 million. The reward in the bag, Harley whispered with a look of horror. Suddenly, his flipping movement took place, his pupils tightened violently, and his heart was shocked. Have it. He saw the young man who was obviously the boss. Captain of the Death God pirates, Death God, Lucifer, a bounty, 100 million. Harley said in horror, and the person next to him touched him. What's wrong with you? Keep your voice down, you will be killed. That person, the bounty is 100 million. Harley said in a low voice in horror. What? Everyone at the table heard it and was shocked. In the first half of this great channel, they have never seen a pirate with a bounty of 100 million. Such a bounty is no longer on the same level as them. Next, Harley continued to flip, and when he saw the bounty orders from Dylan's, Luo, Moria, and Robin, his whole body couldn't hold back, and he kept shaking. He looked at the group of people and didn't even dare to look at them. He was frightened. It was terrible. All the members added up, and the reward was close to 300 million. This group of people is terrible. I can't provoke them. Harry swallowed, and immediately made a decision. No matter what happens next, as long as he encounters this group of people, he must pretend to be dead. There was a strange atmosphere in the bar. No one dared to laugh out loud. They seemed to see something extremely terrifying, and the people watching the table, the fine beads of sweat on their foreheads kept flowing. So, come and tell me, where can I go to the empty island? Yang Qing smiled. The smile was very relaxed and harmonious, but it made everyone tremble. The devil's smile. Everyone was silent. No one said a word. If no one speaks, I can only kill you all. Yang Qing's face turned cold, and murderous intent filled the bar. Gaia Island, you can go from Gaia Island. There were rumors in the past that when a ship passed Gaia Island, it was swept into the air by the updraft and saw an island. Someone shouted in horror. Yang Qing nodded. He naturally knew how to go to the empty island. These people are not stupid. So, tell me, does the empty island exist? Yang Qing asked again with a smile. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Road. Exist. The empty island definitely exists. People shouted loudly, one louder than the other, and the people who heard it on the street looked at the bar strangely. Ha 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 ha. Yang Qing let out a series of laughter, and Dylan's and the others showed smiles on their faces. Afterwards, they left here, and after some shopping, it was already evening. All returned to the boat and rested. Have a night's rest, go to Gaia Island tomorrow, and then, let's go to Sky Island. Okay. Dylan's and the others responded excitedly, and Bucky jumped up excitedly. That's an island in the sky. Will there be angels, will it? You followed Roger. Haven't you been to the Sky Island? Yang Qing asked curiously. When I met Roger, I was just a trainee crew. Bucky said embarrassedly. Yang Qing nodded and understood, and patted Bucky's shoulder. Don't worry, you will see the angel. Bucky got excited again and started dancing while holding glades. In the ancient town of Mo, in a dark room. Brother Ming, we found Luo. Luo, Doflamingo's eyes turned cold in a feather coat. Where is he? It's in Mogu Town. But, the voice responded, with a little hesitation. What's wrong? Doflamingo asked. But it seems that he got on the Death God pirate ship and is now one of them. I'm afraid it's not easy to deal with. The voice said. Death. Doflamingo narrowed his eyes, thinking of the young man he had briefly fought with. Chapter 91. Let's go. Start gathering our family's people and prepare to fight. Brother Doflamingo just thought for a moment before giving the order. This time the opponents may be very strong, so they must be careful. Yes. Besides, is Corazon here? Doflamingo asked again. Yes, although he will die all the time, he is still alive. The voice said. Luo, we have to get it, we can sacrifice at any price. Brother Doflamingo said coldly. A cruel smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Corazon, I didn't expect that you would be saved, although it has nothing to do with death. 2. But my brother, you still have some role to play, so make some more contributions to me. Make up for the price of your betrayal of me. Contrary to everyone's expectations, it seems that a message can be obtained when Doflamingo talks to another person. Corazon is not dead yet. How can that be? Could it be that Yang Qing came across and caused the butterfly reaction? Following Doflamingo's order, the entire family began to move. At this moment, the family members scattered all over the great waterway began to come to Mo Ancient Town by boat. Speaking of luck, Doflamingo came to Mo Ancient Town on a whim, for his business. Brother Doflamingo, who controls many dark forces, is not as huge at this moment as it will be in the future, but he is already slightly famous. Who knows, Luo's trace was found here. On the second day, all the people on the Reaper came to their senses. After getting up one by one and having breakfast made by Glades, they all started exercising. Whether it was Dylan's, Luo, or the newly added Bucky, they didn't slack off about their bodies. When Yang Qing had time, he frantically played his game and accumulated silver taels. The system of swordsman is a huge system. At this moment, only the general martial arts secret book has been opened, but Yang Qing has long discovered that there are still many question marks at the top, and its value is even more maddening. At this moment, Yang Qing didn't even dare to think about it. This guy won't change from martial arts to immortal in the future. Yang Qing saw the question marks at the top of the system, and thought a little inconceivably. Afterwards, when everyone was ready, Yang Qing shouted loudly, and the Reaper took off, heading towards Gaia Island. When he moved, Doflamingo in the town also got the news at the first time. Dover, they left Mogu Town, and the target seems to be Gaia Island. Really, only the two of you are here from the family. Brother Doflamingo's eyes flashed, and he looked gloomily at the two people in front of him. It was Pika and Gradius, and there are 7 people on the other side. Quote. The rest of the family are scattered everywhere, and it will take 3 days to gather together as soon as possible. Gradius said solemnly. Really, caught off guard. Doflamingo said coldly. He thought of that young man. Even though he was very powerful, he was not sure he could deal with it. With only 3 people to deal with a pirate group, Doflamingo has no confidence and no certainty, and he rarely does it. Young master, what should I do? Pika asked sharply. Wait, Doflamingo said, with infinite coldness in his eyes, wait until everyone in the family arrives. At this moment, the Grim Reaper cut through the sea and was driving fast towards Gaia Island. Gaia Island is not far from Mogu Town. In less than an hour, everyone has seen the island. In fact, Mogu Town is located on this Gaia Island, but if Yang Qing and others want to set off from Gaia Island to the empty island, they need to go from this side to the opposite side. At this moment, Yang Qing and others are located near Kulik's home on the animation. After arriving here, they felt that the airflow in the nearby sea area was obviously fluctuating. This sea area is very unstable. Drizzt saw that there were bubbles in the sea that didn't start to emerge continuously, and his expression changed suddenly. It is very likely that it will be suddenly washed into the sky. That's really dangerous, Yang Qing murmured. He looked towards the island. there was indeed a house there. A tall and strong man was sitting on the shore, smoking a cigarette. The mist was lingering. It was Kulik. At this moment, Kulik was looking at the pirate ship not far ahead with a calm expression. There is a constant touch of ships here, and Kulik is used to it. I really want to know, since the record pointer points to the sky, how do we go up? Bucky pointed to the sky and asked suspiciously. Drizzt, Dylan's called. In addition to the navigator, Drizzt also served as the ship's fortune teller. Although his cards are sometimes inaccurate, they are still useful most of the time, with an accuracy rate of over 80%. Leave it to me, Drizzt smiled confidently. I'm lucky today. 2 cards appeared in his hand, and then the red light flashed, and he threw a card into the sky. Make a bet. If you lose, tell me how to go to the empty island. Then he narrowed his eyes, and a minute later, the card in the sky turned over to reveal the numbers on it, and at the same time Drizzt showed his card and said with a big smile, I won. Drizzt closed his eyes again, as if receiving some kind of eerie message. How is it? Did you get the method? Dylan's asked. Yang Qing also looked at him with an interesting look. According to the guidelines, it is said that after 3 days when our ship will not move, God will let us fly into the sky and then descend to our destination. Drizzt said suspiciously, his eyes full of doubts. God. Everyone looked at each other, but Yang Qing laughed. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Yes, understand. Then wait here for 3 days. Although he didn't understand, the captain gave an order, and everyone could only obey. 3 days later, when the morning sun was rising, the death god suddenly began to fluctuate violently. What's going on? Drizzt was startled. He ran around, under the Reaper, and within a radius of 50 meters, there is a strong updraft. The prophecy you got 3 days ago, that god, it's the updraft. Yang Qing said with a smile, the updraft will take us to the empty island. Everyone was stunned and grabbed the boat to resist the violent shaking. In 20 minutes, the updraft will burst out, and at that time, we will, boom, and fly high into the sky. Dylan's shouted, then, it will fall from the sky and shatter to pieces. Bucky's face changed, and a green light appeared on his face with fright. In the ancient town of Grinding. Is everyone here? Doflamingo looked at the group of people in front of him and said coldly, let's go then. Chapter 92 Do You Trust Me? The Don Quixote family headed by Doflamingo started from Mogu Town and headed towards the other side of Gaia Island. When the whole family was walking on the street, there was a shocked cry in Mogu Town. It's them, it's that Doflamingo. The bounty is 150 million. I didn't expect that their pirate group came to Mogu Town. It's so terrifying, I don't even dare to say a word. Soon, the Don Quixote family left Mogu Town and walked quickly towards the other side of Gaia Island. They acted very fast, and after they all assembled, they were silent and their faces were gloomy. 20 minutes later, the Reaper trembled violently, and the nearby sea surface bubbles continued to emerge, and the entire sea surface seemed to be constantly fluctuating. It's coming. Updraft. Hold fast to the boat, everyone, Drizzt shouted. The other people's expressions changed, and they clung to everything on the boat that could hold them in place. Bucky was very exaggerated, and directly asked Luo to tie him to the mast with a bundle of ropes. Yang Qing had a faint smile on his face. With a pinch of his right hand, there was a sound of boom, and a faint light mask encased the Grim Reaper. Buzz. The bubbles on the sea formed a terrifying force of vibration, and the Reaper trembled very violently. Everyone looked at the sea and felt a little nervous. The sea at the moment gave people a terrifying pressure, and it seemed that it would erupt at any time, just like a brewing active volcano. Ship, all right. That burst of shock, Bucky asked tremblingly. Don't worry, Yang Qing nodded, also dignified. The impact of the eruption on the sea surface is enough to rush a ship to a height of 10,000 meters. It is terrifying to imagine how powerful it is. Hey, the people in this boat are going there. On the coast, Kulik was full of surprise, and at this moment, he finally felt shocked. For 3 days in a row, the boat stayed there without moving, and he never understood what these people were going to do. Until today. It was only today, when he saw the changes on the sea, that he understood. The people on this ship are going to take the updraft to fly into the sky. Kulik thought incredulously, looking at how they were here 3 days ago. They have already made plans. These people, are you dying? Kulik stood up abruptly and shouted loudly at the death god, "Where are you idiots going? Get out of there, it's dangerous." Everyone on the Reaper heard Kulik's voice. Yang Qing sat on the bow, stunned for a moment, and then pointed to the sky with a smile. "I heard that there is an island there, let's go up and see." Kulik's body froze, his heart beating violently. What? Are these people going to the Sky Island? How come? Is there really an island in the sky? But how is this possible? He has been trying to find traces of the empty island for a long time, but even in his heart, he didn't quite believe that such a magical sight would really exist. But where did these people get their confidence? Can you reach and safely step on the land there through the updraft? At this moment, Doflamingo's group came to the shore and entered Yang Qing's line of sight. It's them. Yang Qing squinted his eyes, his face became cold, the arrogant and cruel brother Doflaming, he always remembered. This person, when they first set foot on the upside-down mountain, moved his hand, and for this reason, Luo Kai got on their boat. Ho ha ho ho, death is in charge, where are you going? Doflamingo stood on the shore and laughed loudly. Brother Doflamingo. Luo also stared at Brother Doflamingo closely, feeling suddenly tense. Yo, Luo, where are you going? Don't you look at who the person on my back is. Gradius laughed loudly. Luo shifted his gaze to look at Gradius' back. When he saw the man clearly, his expression immediately changed greatly, and he said in a loud voice, Corazon. How is this possible? He is still alive. How can that be? He witnessed Corazon being killed by Doflamingo, but how did he survive? Corazon. Even Yang Qing's eyes were surprised. The person who died long ago in the original book is still alive. He's still alive, Luo, don't you want to come and see him? Doflamingo laughed, turning gloomy again in a blink of an eye. Although it's nothing like being dead. Luo's expression changed, and after 3 seconds, he shouted, I want to get off the boat. For a moment, the people on the boat looked at each other. Around the Grim Reaper, there were already several places of seawater washed up into the air, like a fountain, and the sea trembled even more violently. Under such circumstances, I'm afraid I can't get off the ship anyway. And, they are ready to board the Sky Island. Hey, calm down, Luo, we can't get off the boat at this time. Bucky shouted loudly. Yang Qing's face became extremely gloomy at this moment. He never thought that such an accident would occur. This Doflamingo would appear here, and he even threatened them with Corazon. I'm getting off the boat, Luo said firmly, and he had already walked towards the wall of the boat. Luo, Yang Qing shouted softly. He understood Luo's mood at the moment, so it was even more impossible for him to stop it, but at this moment, getting off the boat was an extremely dangerous thing. Dylan's, is there any way to attack them? Yang Qing turned around and asked. It's too far, I can't get there, and if I can't appear there in an instant, I'll be discovered by them. Dylan's shook his head. At this moment, both of them were thinking about how to rescue Cora. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Loose. Maybe, I can do it. Glades said softly after pondering for a while. Then hurry up, Yang Qing said without hesitation, and looked at Luo again. You can't get off the boat no matter what, it's too dangerous. Leave it to Glades and Dylan's. Luo trembled all over, and finally closed his eyes and nodded heavily, yeah. Dylan's walked towards Glades and said solemnly, don't make a mistake. This time, it's for our brother. Glades felt the heavy pressure. He nodded, and then discussed it with Dylan's very quickly. Yang Qing saw a hint of surprise on Dylan's face, and then nodded heavily. Captain, do you believe me? Dylan's asked after walking to the bow. Yang Qing was stunned for a moment, then nodded. I believe in you, always. Dylan's had a smile on his face. He turned his head towards Glades and said, Glades, come on, I'm ready. The Grim Reaper trembled violently, and the bubbles below were about to blast the ship into the sky. It seems that at any moment at this time, it is possible to wash the ship out of the sea. Chapter 93_. Glades had a dignified face and sweat on his forehead. He stretched out his hands to aim at Dylan's, and then whispered, Air cannon. Buzz. A dull voice resounded, and at the next moment, Dylan's shuddered all over his body, and a gust of wind blew up on the Reaper, plucking everyone's hair, causing everyone to be stunned at the same time, and then they suddenly looked towards the bow. There, Dylan's figure has disappeared. On the Reaper, everyone was taken aback. Their eyes swept quickly, trying to find Dylan's figure, but they couldn't see it for a while. Deputy, where's the co-captain? Bucky shouted loudly, but no one answered him, and no one was found. At the same moment, on the coast, Doflamingo and his group felt something was wrong. Dover, they're missing a man on board. Huh, Doflamingo's expression changed, and then he said loudly, be careful. At the same time, a hand suddenly sprang out from behind Gradius, and tightly grabbed the Corazon on his back. Following that, Corazon's body left Gradius' back. Gradius felt the light behind him. His face changed greatly, his waist suddenly exerted force, and he kicked his leg towards the back. At this moment, almost everyone in the Doflamingo pirates discovered the anomaly here, and all shot towards its back. Bang bang bang. Hit Dylan's right hand, causing his arm to tremble violently, but he still held Corazon tightly. He gritted his teeth and activated his ability. After half a second, Corazon completely disappeared here. On the deck of the Reaper, Corazon's body first appeared in half, and finally appeared here in its entirety. This scene, everyone watching is incredible, and they are relieved. Glades, in particular, exhaled a long breath. He was the most nervous on the field. Because even he didn't have much grasp on that plan. Really, damn it. Doflamingo's face was full of anger. He swept across and kicked into the air, and at the same time he kicked out, he was already full of dark armament color domineering. Bang! The loud sound resounded here, and Dylan's was kicked out of the space with a kick. He spurted blood in the air, and rolled dozens of meters on the ground before stopping, squatting on the ground and watching with a solemn expression. A group of people in front of you. This is the second time he has been injured in a short period of time. For the first time, it was Glades air cannon. The Glades air cannon is a newly developed skill. It can use highly compressed air to form a cannonball-like attack. Its power is extraordinary, and its speed is even more terrifying. The range is also very far. Only his skills can eject Dylan's instantly, and then when Dylan's does not show up, he can use the fruit ability to come to the back of Gradius in an instant to complete this. A series of actions. Only in this way can Corazon be rescued unconsciously. This is the best solution I can think of in the shortest time. The Reaper was in the range of updrafts, the crew couldn't disembark and the ship couldn't move. At this point, even Yang Qing's fruit ability is against the sky, but he can't do it. However, the power of Glades air cannon was terrifying. From the moment it was shot, Dylan's had already been injured once, and his whole body was rolling with blood, but he was forcibly enduring it. By this time, Dylan suffered another kick from Doflamingo and was finally seriously injured. Coupled with the physical strength of moving Corazon, it can be said that the situation Dylan's is facing at the moment is already very dangerous. Looks like it's a success. Dylan's glanced at the Reaper and was relieved to see everyone's expressions. Dylan's, come back soon. Luo shouted loudly, smiling, and rescued Corazon. He was very happy. Are you going back? Dylan's gave a wry smile in his heart, looking at the group of people staring at him, and feeling a little helpless because of the lack of physical strength in his body. I'm afraid it will be difficult. He stood up slowly and faced the flamenco pirates head-on. Luo, Captain, do you believe me? Dylan suddenly shouted loudly. On the Reaper, the expressions of Luo, Yang Qing, Drizzt, Bucky, Glades and others suddenly changed. Especially Glades, he is the most aware of the attack power of his blow. Could it be, the vice captain he? Yang Qing also had bad expectations at this moment. He clenched his fists tightly and stared at Dylan's face. Could it be? You go first, this group. Dylan stood there tall and straight, facing Doflamingo's group, and said with incomparable contempt, this group of scum, leave it to the deputy captain. Dyrens. Luo finally understood. Tears flowed from his eyes, and he shouted excitedly, come back for me. Cut, it's not death. Dylan's heard Luo's voice and had some inexplicable feelings in his heart. Buzz. The Grim Reaper trembled violently, and the next moment, a terrifying airflow suddenly erupted from around them, and the endless seawater was washed out from the bottom of the sea to the high altitude. 3 seconds later, the expressions of everyone on the Reaper changed, and a strong current rushed from the bottom of the ship. In just an instant, the Reaper was washed into the sky. Dyrens. Deputy Captain. There was a loud shout from the ship, and in just 1 second, the Reaper was already 100 meters above the sea. Damn it! Yang Qing slammed his fist and slammed it on the boat. He shouted towards the bottom, Brother Doflamingo, if Dylan's makes a mistake. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. I will definitely take your head. The voice spread to the sea from a distance, and Brother Doflaming heard it. A cold light appeared in his pupils, and then he smiled and said to Dylan's in front of him, it seems that your captain cares about you very much. That's right, we are brothers. Dylan said casually, looking around, looking for a direction to escape, but he was disappointed. I saw everyone in the Doflamingo pirates, very fast occupied the main point and completely surrounded him. Cut, are you so careful? Dylan said disdainfully, but his heart was very solemn, it seems that it is difficult to escape. Brother Doflaming took a step forward, and then said grimly, I'm afraid your captain is going to be disappointed. Taking my brother away makes me very angry. However, maybe we can achieve our goal by exchanging the dying you. Really? Want to catch me? Dylan's raised his eyebrows, calmed his turbulent breathing, and then his expression instantly turned cold, then try it. Combat is imminent. How did Dylan's face the Doflamingo pirates? Chapter 94 Always Believe. On the death god, Yang Qing clenched his fists, his heart was numb. Luo, Drizzt and others also had gloomy expressions. At this moment, they firmly remembered the 5 words Doflamingo in their hearts. The Reaper was driven by the updraft, vibrated violently, and rose into the sky at a terrifying speed. Yang Qing's right hand was slightly opened, maintaining the opening of the death domain, so as to keep the death from being shattered by the updraft. They watched with their own eyes as the sea below grew further and further and Gaia Island became smaller and smaller. It's an exciting moment. The boat leaves the sea and goes to the sky. Maybe there will be islands made of white clouds and beautiful women with wings. But at this moment, all the crew members clenched their fists tightly, their expressions gloomy, and the flames of anger flashed in their eyes. Only them, I will never let go. Glades roared, waving his fists. Who would? Drizzy's hand clacked the cards, and he was always smiling, but at this moment his face was full of icy coldness. Bucky untied his ropes. With tears in his eyes, he ran to the wall, leaned on the mast, looked down, and shouted loudly, Lieutenant Captain. Yang Qing's fists were always clenched tightly, and he closed his eyes. In the dark eyes, there seems to be the figure of Dylan's, the smile on his face, and the words. Trust me. It was just a question that Dylan's asked before he left, and Yang Qing's answer at that time was. I believe in you, always believe. Yang Qing opened his eyes and muttered to the void in front of him. Below is a strong updraft, the water droplets of the sea are splashing, and the surrounding is howling winds, and the Reaper is topped in the highest place. Yang Qing restrained his emotions, then he came to the deck and clapped his hands. Dyrens will be all right, I trust him. Now, our more important task is to go to the empty island. Yang Qing said slowly, although there was no smile on his face, but his voice was quite serious and serious. After a pause, he saw that everyone was looking at him, and just said, "As for the Doflamingo gang." After taking a deep breath, Yang Qing's eyes flashed with murderous intent. "I won't let them go." Under Yang Qing's control, the tremor of the Reaper caused by the impact has stabilized a lot. "Now, Luo, Moria, take a look at Corazone's situation and try your best to revive him. His condition is not very good," Yang Qing said to Luo seriously. Tears flashed in Luo's eyes at the moment. Although Dylan's and him often quarreled, there was no doubt that these two people were the best partners on the whole ship. Dylan's rescued Corazon for him, but let himself fall into the trap. In a desperate situation, this scene made Luo very sad. Having just saved Corazon, but lost Dylan's in the end, Luo's heart was extremely complicated. "Okay, correct your attitude, Luo, Dylan's will be fine," Yang Qing said seriously. Luo nodded, then crouched down and started to check Corazon's body. "Drizzt, speed determines how long we have to get to the island." "That's important." "Yes, Captain." "Bucky, you always pay attention to the things floating in the sky, all unknown objects, destroy him for me. I want to control the Reaper, it is difficult to be distracted." "Understood." "Also, Glades," Yang Qing pondered for a moment, "tell me, will Dylan's be hurt by your blow?" Glades' expression froze, and then slowly said, "My air cannon is a powerful attack formed by compressing air. It is as fast as lightning, and it can hit the opponent almost invisible. The extremely fast impact force, at the same time, a very strong attack was formed. In order to achieve the fastest speed, this attack is my full strength." Quote. Yang Qing closed his eyes, nodded and said, "I understand." Drizzt had figured it out after some betting, and he said at the moment, 3 minutes, this upwelling will be over, and then." "What?" Yang Qing asked. "The hexagram shows that we cannot reach the empty island," Drizzt said solemnly. Yang Qing raised his eyebrows, a little surprised. "Really? That's really bad news." Everyone looked at each other a few times, and they all felt that their luck had reached the extreme today. Gaia Island lost Dylan's, leaving him undecided about his life and death, and it seemed that he couldn't even get to the empty island. Gaia Island. Dylan's and the entire family of Don Quixote looked at each other, both of them were solemn at this moment. "Don't dare to relax at all, this battle has already begun. The great pirate with a bounty of 90 million, Ghost Dylan's, today, let us see your strength." A cruel smile appeared on the corner of Brother Doflamingo's mouth, and he swiped his 5 fingers towards the front. 5-color line. Dylan's expression changed, his body trembled, and 5 lines crossed his body. The result really surprised everyone present. The 5 lines crossed Dylan's body without causing any harm. "Ho ho ho ho, it's beyond my surprise." Brother Doflamingo laughed. He took a step back, and in an instant, all the other members of the Doflamingo pirates swarmed up. The former's face turned cold. "Take him. Let you see my strength. And let you know, the cruelty of death." Dylan's murmured, his figure became blurred, and finally disappeared completely in place. The next moment, his figure appeared in front of Doflamingo. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. A cold light appeared. Doflamingo took a step back and dodged easily. "Your opponent, it's not me now." At the rear, 7 or 8 attacks rushed up. Dylan's expression changed, his figure trembled, and he disappeared here and appeared in another place, just behind Diamante. With a swipe of the dagger, a bloodstain appeared on Diamante's back, and with a scream of pain, the long sword in Diamante's hand swept toward the rear, but Dylan's had already disappeared. The next moment, Dylan's appeared in front of Pika, with a mocking smile on his face, and disappeared again in a flash. The cold light of the dagger flashed in the air. Poof! Pika let out a pained cry, and there was a trace of blood on her face. "I said, you are just a bunch of scumbags." Dylan's voice resounded coldly here, making everyone in the Don Quixote family's complexion change. "He is like a ghost walking in the daytime, No one can see his figure. He dedicated himself to the god of death, but gained more powerful power. At this moment, the members of the Don Quixote family finally learned the power of ghost villains. This kid, his abilities are too tricky, Torapal said with an ugly face. Pika, give me control of this land. Chapter 95 _ This is really troublesome. Dylan's felt the ground shaking under his feet, his face changed slightly, and he panted and muttered. He raised his head and looked at the enemies slowly approaching in front of him, and there was something wrong in his heart. At this moment, Dylan seems to be surrounded by the enemy, fighting alone, without any support. No, he was a warrior under siege. The huge pressure was pressing on Dylan's heart all the time, causing the sweat on his forehead to drip from time to time. A powerful enemy, not much physical strength, and a severely injured body. All of this seems to indicate that Dylan's is in a desperate situation. This is really a bad day. Dylan sighed, and at this moment, his feet trembled suddenly, and a spike pierced his thigh abruptly. A trace of blood bloomed, and a painful expression appeared on Dylan's face. Cut, did you miss it? In the distance, Doflamingo and his party said in disappointment. They saw that the stone thorn penetrated Dylan's right leg, but it was like passing through a phantom. It was obvious that the other party used demon power. A cold smile appeared on Dylan's face, his right leg trembled slightly, and blood flowed out quietly. This blow, after all, still hit him, and the huge force instantly injured him. Ghost, dance. Looking at the group of people in front, Dylan's took a deep breath, and then activated his fruit ability. In just an instant, 7 or 8 Dylans appeared in the field. They walked beside everyone like dancing, and the daggers in their hands flashed with a cold blue light. Poof, poof, poof. The voice was endless, and this terrifying blow was unstoppable, causing everyone present to be in a hurry, and even more screamed, and blood stains appeared on the body. The terrifying speed and the unstoppable entity made Dylan's extremely difficult to deal with. 10 seconds later, Dylan's bent down, took a deep breath, and his physical strength was reduced to a minimum. Powerful tricks will inevitably consume physical strength. In addition, the enemy is not a mediocre person. This blow did not cause them serious injuries. Most of them were just scratches, which did not affect their combat effectiveness. Your stamina is exhausted. Diamante laughed loudly, and with a twist of the long sword, he stabbed Dylan's sharply, and the cold light appeared, seemingly penetrating an infinite distance. Dylan's expression changed, and he hurriedly bent over to dodge. The next moment, the ground under his feet suddenly trembled, fluctuated abruptly, and his balance was suddenly lost. It's over. Dylan's was shocked, and a strong wind flashed and went straight to his waist, but it was Gradius who had already reached him and swept away. Bang! The powerful force directly hit Dylan's, causing his whole body to be shocked, and he was thrown more than 10 meters away, dragging a long trace on the ground. He just spit out a mouthful of blood, and his face was pale. Catch him, Doflamingo said with a blank expression. Dylan's combat power had already surprised him. It took so long to make the opponent lose his combat effectiveness after so many family members were dispatched. Damn it! Dylan's wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his eyes became gloomy, his physical strength had been exhausted by the devil fruit, and he felt the weakness of his body. Powerful abilities must be extremely physical, which is an inevitable result. Just teleporting Corazon, the stamina expended has exceeded his load, and the following series of battles have made him extremely focused. Every strike is accompanied by a rapid loss of stamina. By this time, Dylan's physical strength was close to the bottom. The other members of Doflamingo took one step at a time, approaching Dylan's. Yo, so many people, it's really unfair to target one person. At this moment, a voice came over, and the members of the Doflamingo family paused, looking at the person who made the voice, with a hint of surprise on their faces. On the Reaper, everyone's faces became extremely solemn. Dylan's, how long is it? Yang Qing asked quickly. 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, the updraft will stop. At that time, we will fall from a height of tens of thousands of meters, and then, bang, shattered into pieces. Drizzt said exaggeratedly, his face it is a painful process to wait for death, covered in fine sweat. Okay, Yang Qing nodded, looking at the high altitude. At this height, everyone on the Reaper can already see a layer of white clouds covering the sky. These white clouds are densely covered and hang in the sky, like a beautiful white ocean. From a distance, this white and white sea seems to be close at hand, but it is still far away. How many more seconds? Bucky asked in horror. 10 seconds. Drizzt said immediately. The momentum of the updraft below was getting smaller and smaller, and the speed of the Death God's ascent was getting slower and slower. All the people on the boat were nervous, looking solemnly at the Babai in front of them. If they can't get up, I am afraid there is only one end to welcome them, and that is death. Even Yang Qing's heart is beating wildly at this moment. He is not sure to raise the boat to the Babai Sea, or to land from tens of thousands of meters, and completely control the crazy falling force. Just the power brought by the acceleration is more than 10 million yuan. Yang Qing can control it, but he doesn't know if his physical strength can support it. If the updraft ends, I'm not sure when it falls. On the contrary, if the boat is lifted to the ocean, the distance is shorter and the confidence is relatively greater. Yang Qing's eyes flickered, and he already had a decision in his heart. 10 seconds passed in a blink of an eye, and the forward momentum of the Reaper suddenly stopped, causing violent vibrations, and the people on the ship swayed, unable to stand still. Yang Qing also has a face. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. It became dignified and struggled to control the Reaper to maintain flight in the air. On the other hand, the rising ocean current below has begun to fall towards the ocean surface at a very high speed at this moment. The Reaper completely escaped the push of the upwelling current, and stood still in the sky at this moment. Fly, fly, Bucky exclaimed in disbelief. Next, let's go to the island in the sky. Yang Qing gritted his teeth and used all his strength to control the Death God and start drifting towards the Babai. It is only 50 meters away from Babai. If it is on land, I am afraid that I can jump over it in the blink of an eye. But at this moment, every second, every moment, consumes Yang Qing's physical strength, making his muscles tense and sweat dripping like rain. Gradually, 1 meter, 2 meters, 10 meters, 20 meters, 30 meters, the Death God slowly crawled towards the sky like a snail. Yang Qing clenched his teeth tightly, and sweat oozes from his whole body. Chapter 96 _ Captain. Everyone else noticed Yang Qing's strangeness. His pale face and hideous expression made everyone realize how much pressure their captain was going through at the moment. Here, me, get up. These 3 words popped out between Yang Qing's teeth, and his whole body was shocked. The Death God accelerated again, and passed 10 meters in 3 seconds. At this moment, there are only 10 meters left to reach Babai. Yang Qing's eyes widened in anger, and the blood vessels in his body were about to burst. He felt that he had reached the limit. The air in front of his nose seemed to have a suffocating smell, and the thick smell of blood entered his nostrils. Amidst the exclamations of the others on the Reaper, blood flowed from his nose. Ah! Yang Qing roared, his open right hand suddenly closed. His waist became straight, the domineering look of the Overlord suddenly spread out, and the surrounding void trembled heavily. At this moment, he felt that a mountain was pressing on him, making it difficult for him to even move. The limit. No, I haven't reached the limit yet. With a sound of boom, the invisible ring covering the Reaper suddenly spread out, expanding to a radius of 2 kilometers. It was also at this moment that the Grim Reaper accelerated and plunged headlong into the Babai Sea. With a sound, everyone felt a little suffocated, and a feeling of powerlessness hit their whole body, making them dizzy. Then, 3 seconds later, the eyes suddenly brightened, and the Reaper floated in the white sea. Everyone was stunned and looked at the magical scene in front of them. The blossoming white clouds gathered together to form the sea. The boat actually floated on the clouds. Everyone looked at the Babai in surprise. I'll rest for a while, and you will pull the boat to the island. Yangqing ordered, then closed his eyes tiredly. The blood on the tip of his nose was wiped off by him, and he used this time to recover quickly. Luo, check whether the captain is okay, and why do we feel sore and weak? Drizzt asked calmly when Dylan's was not there. Luo snapped his fingers and then probed towards Yangqing. After 3 seconds, he breathed a sigh of relief. The captain is fine, it's just that the blood is surging. As for us. He paused and said, this is an altitude of tens of thousands of meters. With our physical fitness, we should recover in an hour. It's just a matter of air pressure. You can rest assured. Luo squatted down and carefully treated Corazone's body. You will be fine, and Dylan's, you want to come back. Luo looked at Corazon heavily, thinking of the man who often bickered with him. He called Moria over, and the two took out the bullet casings from Corazon's body. It was hard to imagine that these bullet casings had been embedded in the latter's body for such a long time, and the latter had not died. Afterwards, they bandaged his body. Moria took care of internal medicine, Luo was in charge of surgery, and he was relieved after working for 3 hours. Maybe, he will wake up in 7 days. Moria said quietly, this person, his will to survive is very strong, he should not die. He will never die, Luo said firmly. Yeah, Moria was taken aback, then nodded with a smile. 3 hours later, the Reaper came to the door to enter the empty island, and then after Bucky raised his middle finger and despised the long-winged old lady who was guarding the door and asked for money, the Reaper entered a series of corners, which made everyone hooked. After another hour, they finally saw the island in the sky, and also saw the Sky Islander with wings. Wow, there are really angels, and they are so beautiful. Drizzt shouted, we must have come to heaven, we must be, ha ha ha. Look, that vehicle can actually fly on the sea, so I really want to play. Bucky yelled, pointing at Waiba in front of him. The others had smiles on their faces, feeling very curious about everything here. Many things in the Sky Island are different from those in the island city, and it is these that attract everyone. The Reaper gradually docked and came to the shore, attracting countless Sky Islanders. When they saw this ship, which obviously did not belong to the empty island, they all showed a trace of curiosity, and then reacted. This is the island city's ship, right? They have no wings, they are from the island city. Wow, the people who actually came to Daocheng, I haven't seen them before. The people on the empty island shouted, and the scene seemed to get out of control for a while. Yangqing also woke up at this time, most of his body recovered, opened his eyes, and smiled at the scene in front of him. After everyone got off the boat, the people on the empty island started to greet everyone enthusiastically after the fear of the unknown. They are a very friendly kind of people, and the people with the Reaper looked at that. When everyone saw the magical variety of shells, they were even more excited. It's a musical shell, it's a flame shell, it's a shock shell. The people on the empty island introduced them in detail, everyone nodded, and Luo was responsible for paying silently to put these magical shells in the package. In addition to the shells, there is also Waiba. Bucky yelled and drove the Waiba on the street. He had a lot of fun and caused panic among the people in the sky. Yangqing looked at this scene with a smile. When everyone was almost having a good time, he asked the people on the empty island casually, do you know Analu? Just a word, just now they were still elated. The extremely enthusiastic Sky Island people seemed to have been pressed the stop button. The people on the whole street kept their original expressions and did not move, and then the smiles on their faces changed at a speed visible to the naked eye. What happened to them? Bucky asked confused. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Perhaps, we have angered a certain existence here. Yangqing saw the expressions on everyone's faces, and already understood. It seems that at this time, Analu has obtained the control of the empty. That is he on that island? Yangqing turned his head and looked at the island not far from the empty island, which was filled with the atmosphere of the island below. Ziz. The sound of the electric flower rang in the sky, and the people on the empty island all over the street looked at the sky in fear, then rolled and crawled out of here, closed the door in the room tightly, and quietly leaned on the window and looked out. Only the Death God Pirates group stood there wonderingly, looking at everything here strangely. "Look, there's lightning in there." Robin pointed at the blue electric light in the sky in surprise. Everyone looked up, and the terrible high-temperature blue electric light was constantly brewing. Chapter 97 The Power of Thunder. Boom! In an instant, the lightning that gathered into a cylinder crashed down towards Yang Qing's head. This speed is almost fleeting, so fast that no one can react. Yang Qing's right hand trembled, and there was a soft sound of boom, and a light circle spread out. Immediately after that, Yang Qing was bathed in thunder light, sparkling, and the high temperature made the surrounding air smell of scorching. 3 seconds later, a bottomless scorched pit appeared on the ground, and thick smoke came out. "It's really scary." Yang Qing's eyes shrank, and then she laughed. Such attack power is what he likes the most. He looked up at the sky, and there was nothing in the sky. The people of the Death God Pirates also looked at all this in amazement, and did not understand where the lightning came from. It's God, God's punishment. When they are finished, they call on God's name, and no one can save them. On both sides of the street, there were whispering voices. Everyone was stunned, and then trembled. They couldn't help but think of the thunder and lightning just now, and their hearts were also afraid. "No, it's not really God, is it? The power of thunder and lightning has always been the domain of the gods, so even people can't see the thunder and lightning falling from the sky. I am afraid that only gods can send it." Yang Qing glanced at everyone and saw the somewhat shocked expressions on their faces. "I understand in my heart that anyone who sees such a phenomenon will be amazed, even terrified. Analu, I know you heard it. Don't worry, I will find you next." Yang Qing raised her head and said lightly to the sky. Inside the shrine. One is naked. A naked young man with a white turban on his head and 4 taiko drums behind his back. His right foot is on his left leg, as if sitting cross-legged on a chair, digging out his ears, and biting his hand indifferently. "The apple," some playfully muttered to himself. "Come to me, it's really interesting. But is God so easy to see?" He slowly stretched out, extracted his right hand, and the tip of his index finger began to flash with blue brilliance. At the same time, above Yang Qing and the others, a cloud of thunder shrouded it, and thunder and lightning clashed, making a piercing sound. Yang Qing squinted his eyes, and Analu shot again. And this time, the range of the attack was even bigger than the previous one, covering almost 50 meters around them. In just 3 seconds, the thunderclouds in the sky roared, and then a large group of crackling thunder and lightning fell towards everyone. This thunderbolt contains a terrifying high heat, which can almost instantly knock anyone into a black ball. "It's here again," Bucky yelled in horror, and the others also looked solemn. "Huh!" In just an instant, the thunder light fell and bombarded the crowd. It was only in a matter of seconds that Yang Qing's face changed. The fingers of his right hand trembled slightly, and there was a soft sound of boom, and the faint mask quickly spread out in all directions. "Ah!" Bucky screamed, already struck by lightning, and fell to the ground. Almost instantly, Bucky was killed in seconds, and the terrifying high-temperature lightning made the latter lose his ability to move and twitch. Some other thunder and lightning swept across the ground, swept out a series of black scorch marks. "Turn it to me," Yang Qing shouted, and stretched out his right hand to touch the front. The air suddenly shook, and then all the lightning that fell, or did not fall, seemed to be under control at this moment. Reversed upwards, towards the sky it flew away, turned into blue light, and disappeared after 3 seconds. "Bucky!" Luo quickly ran to Bucky's side and shouted nervously. Yang Qing walked over quickly with a serious face. "How is he?" Luo checked it carefully, with an ugly expression. "I was struck by lightning and lost my ability to move." Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and his face became gloomy. "It seems that you are very unfriendly." Analu in the shrine sneered, but withdrew his hand. "God is arrogant, and he has given up without destroying the opponent twice." After waiting for a long time, there was no more thunder and lightning in the sky, and everyone was relieved. It's safe for now, Drizzt said with an ugly smile on his face. In the face of such a powerful and fast terrifying thing as thunder and lightning, everyone's heart is heavy. What's even scarier is that they can't see where the opponent is. That is to say, at this time, Anilu has already taken control of the heart network. That is it a domineering look? Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and he was also shocked by the latter's talent, but if this is the case, it will be troublesome. Quote, in the face of people like Anilu, they must be completely suppressed with super strong combat power, otherwise they will not be able to subdue the latter. If Yang Qing wants to subdue Anilu, he needs to use his high strength to completely subdue him, tie him to a tie, or if it takes a long time, Anilu will feel unwilling. Looks like I have to do my best. Yang Qing was under some pressure. When he read the original book, Luffy hung up and defeated Anilu, but only when he was really faced with thunder and lightning could he feel the opponent's difficulty. Deal with. It is worthy of being the strongest fruit of the natural system, the thunder fruit, but just facing it, it has already made people extremely dignified. It seems that this is really like a godlike ability. Next, let's go there. Yang Qing pointed to the island ahead, EPUB. Does that god live there? Bucky came back to his senses at this time. Panic flashed in his eyes. Almost instantly, thunder and lightning fell on him, and he had no ability to resist. Not bad. But, Bucky, you are still too weak. Yang Qing nodded and frowned. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Bucky's face trembled, and he said with an ugly face, I will practice hard. Others were more or less able to react to lightning and then dodge quickly. Only Bucky, whose speed and reflexes were so bad, were instantly killed. After everyone rested for a while, they set off and walked towards EPUB together. Seeing that there was no one on the street, they each had a waiba and ran quickly towards EPUB. An hour later, everyone entered the jungle like the island below. Here, it is exactly the same as the island below, Drizzt said in surprise. Robin's eyes were shining. She noticed that the trees here were very old. Robin, pay attention to everything here. Maybe you will find something you like here. Yang Qing said with a smile. Robin was taken aback for a moment, then smiled and nodded. Looking at the surrounding terrain and climate, this island is likely to come from the world below. Moria said wisely, holding up her glasses. How is that possible? You mean, such a huge island came from below? Who would have such a powerful force? Is it really a god? Bucky said in shock, thinking of the idea again in his mind. Terrible thunder and lightning, the whole body trembled. Everyone also looked at Moria, while Yang Qing frowned and thought. Chapter 98 Before the Shrine. He was thinking about where Anilu was at the moment. According to the plot, Anilu had been in control of the Sky Island for 6 years, which meant that his position at the moment was not necessarily where he was. And observing the empty island, it is also under the command of the original god. As for their fear, it is only because of the violence of Anilu. In this way, it seems that Anilu has not yet controlled the entire Sky Island at this moment. That is to say, is his identity as a god actually a self-proclaimed one? Of course, you will have to go to the shrine to find out what the situation is. It's not just gods who have this ability, it may also be nature. Moria rolled her eyes and really didn't want to say anything about Bucky's stupidity. For example, the upwelling current. Everyone nodded, thinking of the ocean current that rushed everyone into the sky. It is indeed very possible. That's right, 400 years ago, a sea current divided the island of Dejaya in half, and one half is the island we are standing on now. The other one. Yang Qing paused, then said softly, it's the current one, Gaia Island. Quote. Gaia Island. When Dylan's heard the voice behind him, he was stunned for a moment, and then smiled bitterly. I can't believe that there will be people who can't stand it anymore. Come and help me. At this time, the back of the figure was already standing in front of him. You guys help me to fulfill my dreams and make up for the regrets of my life. All I can do is to keep you from falling into an unfair duel. The back stood in front. His voice was serious and serious. The smoke in his mouth he inhaled sharply, letting the white smoke linger upwards. Tattoo. Soon, a series of footsteps sounded, and a group of people stood in front of Dylan's and the people who came. "Who are you?" Dylan's was stunned, completely unable to understand what the people who came here meant, let alone who the group of people in front of him was. "Tsuruyama United Pirates, join us." The people who came were the pirates that Kulik was carrying. Although they are not strong in combat, they are numerous. Coming here at this moment has actually saved Dylan's desperate situation a little bit. It was also their arrival that gave Dylan's a chance. When Doflamingo saw the person coming, he was first surprised, then frowned, and he waved his hand with a cold face. Killed. At the same time, not far from Gaia Island, a large pirate ship slowly sailed over. The pirate ship was filled with gloomy yellow sand, like a desert. "Captain, we are almost at Gaia Island." "Really? Gaia Island?" At the bow of the boat, a tall man with a cigar in his mouth replied in a low voice. His body was surrounded by fine sand, slowly waving. It was Crocodile. About 10 miles behind Crocodile, a warship followed Crocodile against the wind and waves. In front of the warship was a strong man 2 meters tall, with the cloak of justice fluttering in the wind, staring at them gloomily. The rank on his shoulders is a brigadier general. "Mr. Commodore, the Crocodile gang, right ahead." "Okay, tell me to go down and prepare to fight. These scumbags actually want to escape from my hands," the brigadier general said coldly. For a while, Gaia Island actually gathered forces from all sides, and it seemed to become more lively. Apayado, above the temple, Anilu sat cross-legged on the big chair at the top, bit off half of the apple, and then looked down at the group of people who were terrified, especially the old man, with a trace of disdain on the corner of his mouth. "Smile. You are in control here, but God's position must be mine." They all fear themselves because they have great power. They claim to be gods, but tremble and fear in front of themselves. They are false gods, and they are the real gods and possess the power of gods. A group of interesting challengers. "I'll be waiting for you." Ani Lulu bit off the remaining apple expressionlessly and swallowed it down his throat in a few bites. And the people below were sweating coldly on their foreheads, and they didn't even dare to say a word in front of Enilu. This man is so ruthless and cruel. The group of Reaper was walking in Apayado. When they entered the central area, they saw the ruins of 400 years ago, the ancient buildings, and the huge vines spawned, which made everyone stunned, and then with curiosity in their eyes, running there, Robin's eyes became brighter and brighter. "The history here is at least 1,000 years old." Robin touched the rock wall beside him, and said in shock. She looked at the residual paintings on the surrounding walls, which recorded 400 years ago or even more ancient times. Story. Yang Qing silently got out of the crowd and walked towards the place where Anilu was. Dylan's is still below, he has no time to delay. Just half an hour later, Yang Qing entered the dense jungle alone. He followed the road in his memory and headed towards the shrine, which was still some distance away from the palace. "Where's the captain?" At this time, the others discovered that Yang Qing was gone, and couldn't help but say in amazement. They looked around, but couldn't find the latter, so they had no choice but to withdraw their gazes. "He'll be fine, don't worry," Blades said. Everyone nodded. Although Yang Qing's power is rarely displayed, his godlike ability is probably more terrifying than the god on this island. They are even thinking that there are very few people in this world who may be able to one-on-one with the boss. 3 hours later, Yang Qing came to the shrine. Looking at the huge palace in front of him, a smile appeared on his face, and it seemed that his memory was not wrong. At this time, there are no so-called 4 trials yet, and there are many fewer bumps on the road. Yang Qing's speed along the way was also the fastest, and sometimes he even controlled himself to fly up and hurry. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. "Anilu, I'm here to find you," Yang Qing said calmly, looking straight ahead. He knew that Anilu could hear it. Maybe his heart network was not as strong as it was later, but it was easy to monitor some designated areas. Sure enough, a second later, a flash of lightning appeared in the void in front of Yang Qing, and under the flash of lightning, a burly young man with a height of 2 meters appeared in front of him. His face was indifferent, his upper body was naked, he looked ruthless, and there was no expression on his face. "Human, you dare to come here, you have to admire your courage." Ainilu flicked the golden long stick in his hand and pointed at Yang Qing with a grim expression. "However, only God's punishment awaits you." Ainilu's mouth burst into a cruel smile, "And the result of my sanctions against you is death." Yang Qing raised his eyebrows, and then his face became sharp, and he walked forward step by step. Every step he took was accompanied by a roar of the surrounding air, and even the ground was shaking. Brewing. When this domineering burst out, it will inevitably form a powerful deterrent. Chapter 99. What's the matter? Do you know, Anilu, in fact, you are so ignorant and arrogant that you call yourself a god. Do you think you can become a god if you take off your wings and replace them with thunder drums? Recognize yourself, you are just a human being, albeit with great power. But, after all, it's just humans. Ainilu's face suddenly turned hideous, the tip of the long stick flashed a blue electric light. He was already furious. Yang Qing's words exposed the side of his heart that he didn't want people to know the most. The sound of zzzz continued to be heard, and lightning flashed from the tip of Anilu's stick, as if his mood had become violent. There was a burning smell in the air, and the air was burned into a vacuum. Yang Qing took another step, the space trembled suddenly, and the majestic overlord domineering arrogance had not yet been released, but it had already made the air whine, and cracks appeared on the walls of the shrine building. But Anilu, who was standing not far in front of him, didn't notice it at all. Mighty power can make a man a god, but it never includes arrogance. Go to hell, Anilu yelled, and lightning flashed from the tip of the long stick. Thunder Dragon, 50 million volts. Zizz. Lightning suddenly burst out, turned into a stream of light, and went towards Yang Qing at an incredible speed. It was also at this moment that Yang Qing's pupils suddenly stared, and a terrifying suppressed aura shocked the surroundings. All the Sky Island soldiers standing within a kilometer nearby rolled their eyes and fainted. Anilu was even more shocked, and a coma appeared in his eyes. Afterwards, the lightning that swept towards Yang Qing seemed to have been manipulated. It spontaneously broke away from the original line, turned towards both sides of it, and then slammed to the ground, burning the white clouds of the shrine to the ground. White gas. What? Anilu felt dizzy at the moment, he couldn't even stand still, and the terrifying aura made him stunned for a moment, as if someone had hit him hard on the back of the head with a hammer. It was as if there was a gold star twinkling in front of him. Yang Qing continued to walk, and his hand slowly pulled out the long sword on his back. With the sound of choking being unsheathed, a blue, psychedelic and beautiful long sword appeared in his hand. Break the air. Anilu staggered back towards the back, and it was not until 5 seconds later that he could see Yang Qing clearly. Then he became furious. With a long stick, he started to run. After 10 steps, a stick slammed towards Yang Qing. Sweep away. Yang Qing raised his sword to the side, and the air was shocked by the powerful confrontation. Then, the terrifying lightning force was transmitted down the long stick of Anilu very quickly. Yang Qing's face changed, and he stepped back. An inexplicable power surged. Anilu's expression also changed, and immediately disappeared into lightning, appearing 10 meters away. Anilu was shocked. The boy in front of him actually controlled such a strange power. Although he did not get detailed information from the other party's thoughts, he felt a huge danger. Is it domineering? A serious look appeared on Yang Qing's face. Armed color, seeing color, overlord color, 3 colors domineering. It is a unique power in the world of pirates. Among them, armed power can improve people's defense and attack power, and it is the only effective means to deal with the natural system other than sea building stones or mutual restraining substances, while knowledge and domineering can advance. The means to advance the enemy is an extremely useful and terrifying power. In the end, the tyrannical arrogance is the unparalleled aptitude of a king. It can deter all enemies with weak willpower, and achieve the effect of eliminating thousands of troops without any effort. At this moment, Yang Qing has not mastered the domineering arrogance of the armed force, nor the arrogance of the knowledge. It is difficult to cultivate these two domineering arrogance without teaching. He has also studied it before, but he has no clue. Only the overlord color, with his own qualifications, he completed the awakening. Because of this, he specially built a long sword of Halu stone. Before the body moved, Yang Qing's long sword burst into a dazzling cold light, and instantly pierced 10 swords in the air ahead. The air trembled, and there was a terrifying airflow surging, turning into the most severe attack, heading towards Annie Road. The latter's face changed, and his body completed a strange and fast movement, and he avoided it without exception. Ha ha ha, I've said it before, I'm a god, I've seen through all your actions. Anilu let out a long laugh, and the long stick moved towards Yang Qing with a strong wind from top to bottom. It was an impressive move. It smashed Washin with force, and the long stick was accompanied by a terrifying electric light, and the attack was powerful. Yang Qing's left hand trembled slightly, and silently saw the controlled thunder and lightning peel off from the long stick. Then the long sword blocked the long stick, and then the sword's surface slid across the long stick, cutting the latter's wrist. Anilu's face changed, and he suddenly retracted his hand and gave up his weapon. Then his face changed drastically, turning into a flash of lightning and leaving the place. It's that power again. Yang Qing was a little disappointed. If his ability could catch Anilu, it would be easy to say. It's just that the opposite is the natural system, and the body can be turned into lightning at any time, which is very difficult. At this moment, Anilu finally chose to conduct a long-range attack with the latter. After several rounds of close combat, he realized that his physical skills were much different from those of his opponent. In addition, the opponent seems to be able to see through his own attack, and his reaction time is incredible. He didn't know that this was Yang Qing's development of his own abilities, which could have the same effect as seeing and hearing. Ziz. The flickering electric lights began to gather, and lightning bolts continued to emanate from Anilu's hands, heading towards Yang Qing. The latter strode forward, shrouded in a circle of invisible light all over his body, all the lightning strikes in front of him, spontaneously breaking away from the trajectory and hitting the ground. This scene made Anilu face. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. The color is ugly, his lightning is useless, damn, what the hell is going on? Anilu, you are not a god. I am more like a god than you. At this moment, Yang Qing spoke up. Following his words, the surrounding space seemed to be under his control, the lightning flashing in the air stopped, and the land on the ground floated up. It was his face that changed, and it turned into lightning again and disappeared here. That strange power, this time the diffuse range is even larger. This time, the radius of a kilometer centered on the other party was enveloped. Anilu stood at the top of the shrine building, looking at the young man below with a dignified expression. With a radius of 1,000 meters, such a huge area seems to have become the opponent's domain, which can be controlled according to his mind. This kid, what's going on? Chapter 100 Trust. Yang Qing squatted down slowly, and then pressed his right hand to the ground. At the moment of this pressing, there was a sudden shock within the radius of 1,000 meters, and after a hum sound, everything within 1,000 meters was under his control. The ground made of clouds, the rooms, the trees, the walls, nothing escaped his control. Get up! With a loud shout, Yang Qing's eyes shone with a cold light. Next, he had to resolve the battle as quickly as possible and completely make Anilu submit. Such a person must convince him by means of thunder, and the battle just now has already wasted too much time. Everything within a kilometer of boom was trembling frantically, and after Yang Qing's body shook in the next moment, it all turned into the most severe and terrifying attack, drowning towards Annie Road. Anilu, who was standing on the wall, changed his face in an instant, and the lightning flashed all over his body to be elementalized. It was also at the same time that Yang Qing moved his pace sharply, the long sword in his hand drew an arc, jumped up 3 seconds later, and slashed towards the thunder light transformed by Anilu. Poof! A slight voice came out, and the thunder light transformed by Anilu flickered violently, and then slowly revealed his own body. At this moment, Anilu looked shocked, looking at Yang Qing who was in front of him. His eyes were full. Is fear. I'm actually injured. The earth was overturned just now, and the world seemed to be targeting itself at that moment. He could only deal with it elementally, but at the next moment, the young man slashed him with a sword. In the next moment, the sky-filled attack drowned Anilu. Yang Qing stood 10 meters away from any road. His face was indifferent and he slowly put the long sword into the scabbard. It's over. Yang Qing's eyes flashed, and then he strode towards Any Road, which was submerged in dust and stones. As he moved forward, everything that submerged Any Road slowly floated up, revealing serious injuries. The latter. You kid. Anilu's face was ashen, but he was still conscious. He was injured in many places, blood was flowing, and he was in a state of embarrassment. The lightning flashed. Anilu hadn't given up yet, and his eyes flashed with unwillingness. Yang Qing was expressionless and strode forward. Just as Anilu was about to release the lightning, the latter's eyes glared, the air trembled, and the Overlord Domineering launched. Anilu's whole body trembled, and his eyes rolled. He rolled his eyes, completely fainted. Afterwards, Yang Qing slowly bent over and held Anilu on his shoulders. Have a good rest. From now on, we are brothers. Anilu, who was in a coma, was tense all over, but when he heard this sentence, he relaxed, and then there were tears in his eyes. Your dream doesn't seem to be friendly. Yang Qing noticed this scene and murmured with a complicated expression. Then, he took a step and left here with Anilu. Just after Yang Qing and Anilu left, Gangkol in the shrine ran out with a group of people. They looked at the ruins in the field with shock in their eyes. Did you see it? I see, that young man defeated Anilu and took him away. In other words, won't the demon Anilu come back in the future? Everyone said with ease in their eyes, with joy on their faces. That's not necessarily true, Gangkol murmured with a dignified face. The young man just took away the seriously injured Anilu, but didn't kill him. He clearly had a different purpose. The god of death is everywhere. Bucky and Luo kept running and playing and having fun, while the others carefully observed everything in the ancient ruins. And Drizzt, relying on his own fruit ability, found a lot of gold, and his face was full of joy. At this moment, Robin has come to a dark stone. This is. Robin's face changed, and his right hand couldn't help touching the square black stone. What's wrong? Moria asked, noticing Robin's face. No, it's nothing. Robin's face returned to normal, and he said easily. Moria shook her head and walked away. Robin breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the latter leave. Then carefully study the information described on the stone. As time passed, Robin's forehead was sweating, and the information recorded on it was too shocking to her. Robin. Suddenly, a hand clapped on her shoulder. Robin shuddered and turned his head sharply. Ship, Captain. It's me, what's the matter with you? You look like you're sweating profusely. Yang Qing asked suspiciously. Anilu on his back was thrown directly to the ground by him, and then he called Luo over. Luo dropped Bucky and gave him his middle finger savagely, then walked over to check on Anilu's injury. No, Robin's eyes flashed, concealing the information of the historical text. Yang Qing saw the black stone in front of him, with a hint of understanding on his face, and then smiled. I said, there is something you are interested in here. How is it? Do you still like what is written on this stone? Captain, you know that. Robin said in shock. Probably understand. Yang Qing nodded and said casually. What? Robin felt incredible. She looked at Yang Qing, but, this is, Haihuang. After talking halfway, Robin covered his mouth. It is really too important. This is a weapon that can destroy the world. Oh, I don't know what this is, when. This chapter is not over. Click on the next page to continue reading. Of course, I won't mind if you're going to tell me, Robin. Yang Qing said with a smile, patted the latter's shoulder, and left. It seems that Robin still doesn't trust himself 100%. What a failure. 3 hours later, Yang Qing will call together the people who have finished searching here, and then say with a serious face, "We have no time to waste here, Dylan's is still in a dangerous situation. He must leave here immediately. As for these gold." Yang Qing paused. "Take it all away, it's up to you guys." Everyone looked at the gold like a mountain in front of them, and their faces were blank. This is a golden treasure like a mountain, and it weighs several tons alone, which is really a big problem. And this guy El Nilu. Everyone looked at Ainalu, who was tied like a zongzi. Luo showed no mercy when he was tied, and Bucky even grinned and put on the Halu stone for the latter. At this moment, Ainalu is soft and unable to exert any strength. Luo, Bucky, Glades, Drizzt and others flashed a ray of light in their eyes, watching the latter nodded seriously. As for Ainalu, his pupils contracted suddenly and his heart beat faster. Brother, brother,